ready? Are you ready? It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment. This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Oh, yeah, it's a Friday. It's a great day to be alive on Westwood One Sports. How you doing, everybody? Chris Mack in for Nick Costos again today here on You Better You Bet. Already, we're off to a better start than yesterday because, as you can tell, I have functioning microphones in my studio today. Yes, we're ready to go. The weekend is in front of us. We've got the Olympics ongoing. I fell in on an Olympic story yesterday. We'll get into it later in the show. That it's funny how you watch the Olympics and you have, it's on in the background. You don't think anything of it. And then all of a sudden, the dude is flying down an ice ramp at 70 miles an hour face first. And you go, you do the Leo DiCaprio, right? You go, ooh, I recognize that. Not the sport itself, because I still have no idea how skeleton works other than just trying to survive at 70 miles an hour down a sheet of ice. But you go, ooh, I think I might know that. We'll get into that a little bit later. We've got tons of friends joining us today on the show. Nick Friedell, NBA insider in the final show. Will we get to a spot where we can actually punish NBA teams for real for tanking? And is anybody going to pay attention to All-Star Weekend? Q Myers from Vegas to talk Raiders, because I had some thoughts about the Raiders yesterday, and I'm curious if he thinks I'm crazy. Alex Gold, we'll keep it in the AFC West. He'll join us 1 hour from now to talk about what may be the most interesting Chiefs offseason in years. There's a lot to get into. NBA, as I mentioned, NFL offseason is fully in swing. But let's get to the 5 biggest stories of the day. Right off the top, the high five.
5.
12 consecutive completions for Chambliss. Going for 13. He has it. And another touchdown. Harrison Wallace having the night of his life.
I love when Sean McDonough's voice cracks. He's one of the best in the business. And when that voice cracks, you know it's getting real, because McDonough's lighting up the microphone. Trinidad Chambliss touchdown pass against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, thanks to ESPN and ABC. He has won yet another appeal in a Mississippi State court to win back his eligibility for a final year of D1 college football. I still don't understand why Chambliss is convinced that he couldn't make more money in the NFL than he will next year with Ole Miss. But here we are. Now, the word amongst everybody talking about it is that maybe his agents have heard from all 32 teams that absolutely none of them would have any interest in drafting Chambliss, at least not on the first couple of days of the draft in April. Now, I personally find that hard to believe. I know there are people out there who aren't Trinidad Chambliss believers, but especially given the way the dude played last season, up to and including the playoffs. I'm a Chambliss believer. Laugh at me if you want to, but I'm left wondering about a scenario that may be far more frightening for Trinidad Chambliss and his future NFL prospects than the idea that 32 teams aren't interested in him. I'm left wondering about the possibility that maybe one team is way more interested in Trinidad Chambliss than anybody else. The idea that maybe the Jets are very, very interested in Trinidad Chambliss. Think about it. The idea of playing for the Jets, even the possibility of it, was enough to send Dante Moore running back to Eugene, Oregon for another year. Could the idea of playing for the Jets be enough to send Trinidad Chambliss back to Ole Miss? Absolutely. Now, would it be crazy to take Chambliss second overall? Absolutely. I like him. I don't like him that much. But have the Jets done wilder and stupider things? I would defer to our video producer, Mike Brown. Absolutely. They're the Jets. Grandkids are drafting teams based off of Madden ratings. They're the Jets. And maybe it wouldn't even be about going there in the first round, right? Because I think we all agree, even those of us that like Trinidad Chambliss, not a first-round talent yet. And maybe that's it. Maybe Chambliss really believes going back for another year will take him from guy who may go in the 5th round to guy who is a solid first or second day draft pick with another good year at Ole Miss. But maybe he's just heard that the Jets really like him and that they'd even take him in a later round. I don't know. If that scuttlebutt exists, I think we would have heard about it by now. But maybe it's flying just far enough under the radar that the mere possibility, as minuscule, infinitesimal as it may be, the mere possibility of ending up in Florham Park is enough to dissuade Chambliss from wanting to go into the draft until after the Jets have hopefully found a different quarterback at some point this year. Is it that far outside the realm of possibility that Chambliss is dodging the Jets? Don't worry, I've got enough tinfoil. We can all make hats. I want to get into this in a little more detail later. Next.
4.
I pride myself and think of myself as a man of faith. As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run.
It never gets old. It never gets old. Thanks to Fox for the Tom Brenneman, Nick Castellanos apology call. Castellanos, the story here is not that. The story is Castellanos, no longer a Philadelphia Philly, released by them yesterday. And the story behind it is as interesting as the way the story came to light. Castellanos on his Instagram yesterday posted a handwritten note on loose leaf notebook paper outlining the Miami incident. It sounds like a slate they throw up in the middle of a Tarantino movie as they're transitioning from one scene to another. The Miami incident. Castellanos was pulled late in the game for defense against the Marlins in his hometown of Miami and decided he was so upset about it, he was going to go grab a Presidente, a beer, and take it into the dugout to have a few swigs while berating manager Rob Thompson. Now, I could make a joke here. Apologies to our other video producer, Dan Turner. I can make a joke here about how having to live in Philadelphia for more than a few years would drive me to drink too. But I'm not going to do that. Too late? Sorry. So let's analyze this from the perspective of a Phillies team who hasn't gotten nearly the production in the lineup that they once had from Castellanos. His bat took such a dive last year, and his attitude apparently along with it, that the Phillies, who granted are pretty free spenders anyway, they're willing to eat $20 million this year just to make Castellanos and his headaches go away. As for the Instagram post by Castellanos bringing all of this to light, can we just pause for a second and admire the Facebook dad energy here? To scrawl out a 2-page note, take snapshots of it, and then post it to Instagram is right up there with your uncle being convinced that if he copies and shares that post about how none of his personal information is going to be shared on his Facebook, he'll be safe. I'm telling you, they got all your information. You got to put this up there, kid. It's right up there with your aunt resharing the post about TJ Watt rushing into a burning veterinary hospital and saving baby kittens by the armful. Aunt Linda, that's not real. That's not a real story. Look, I'm solidly in my mid-40s. So I am not going to sit here and pretend like I am some sort of social media savant. I couldn't tell you the last time I opened my Snapchat app, and my For You page on Instagram is mostly old clips of 1990s wrestling. So clearly I haven't mastered the algorithm. I get it. But Castellanos' inability to understand, A, what he did wrong, and more importantly, B, how to actually express what he's feeling in some sort of coherent form, is hilariously a cherry on top of this melting poop sundae for the Phillies. Castellanos will end up somewhere. He'll hit 245 with 15 to 20 home runs, an underwhelming addition to a lineup that's probably looking for more, but also looking to save some coin because they won't have to pay him a big salary this year due to the money the Phils are still going to owe him. And I can't wait for the fallout from that. Will we get something scribbled in crayon and a picture of it taken with a Polaroid and then a picture of that Polaroid posted to MySpace? I don't know. The possibilities are endless, and I'm here for all of them. Next.
3.
So would I do it? Absolutely, I would do it. I told you 2 things. I'd have to be healthy, and I would want a chance to win a Super Bowl.
That's 2 pretty good factors.
And obviously, that's a tough thing to find. That's hard to do. That's not easy.
That's Derek Carr talking with his brother David on their podcast, Homegrown. We talked at length a couple of weeks ago when I filled in for Nick here on You Better You Bet about who could be the next Sam Darnold. Now, this is not to suggest that it's easy for a veteran quarterback to get a fresh start somewhere and vault themselves to a Lombardi trophy in their first season in that new place, especially after a year off in Carr's case. But with the lack of quarterback talent available in both free agency and the draft this year, is it that crazy for a team who wants to take a swing and isn't that happy with what they currently have in their quarterback room to take a swing on Carr? He's 5-5 in his last season as a starter in New Orleans, was on pace for what would have been 25 touchdowns had he played 17 games, only threw 5 picks in the 10 that he did play. And look, the yardage totals weren't great. He wasn't slinging the rock way downfield. But look at what he was working with. Chris Olave and MVS each only played half a season that year. Alvin Kamara didn't even hit 1,000 yards on the ground. And Clint Kubiak was in his first year as an offensive coordinator. Now, Carr says he wants to go to a place where he can compete for a Super Bowl. And honestly, those options are very, very limited if he's serious about that expectation. There's only one place that I can think of that really makes sense, and it's the same destination that I brought up during that conversation a couple weeks ago in relation to Kyler Murray. If you weren't here for it, I think it's a conversation worth diving into in a little greater detail, and I'll tell you exactly where it could make the most sense for Carr if he's serious about a comeback when we get into this right around 10:20 Eastern or so here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. We are on Westwood One Sports, inside the Westwood One Sports app, and live across North America on Sirius XM Channel 375. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos, getting you the biggest stories of the day right off the top. Next.
2.
It's all about the communication, being very open and honest. But I need to be upfront with any player about why we're doing what we're doing.
That's Utah Jazz head coach Will Hardy on talking to his players about why they're doing what they're doing. Like, hey, close game, fourth quarter. Laurie, Jaren, sit down. Don't need you. Trying to get a top 3 pick. The NBA cracked down on the Utah Jazz for all of this yesterday, fining them $500,000 for benching stars Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. for the fourth quarter, of a couple games last week. Quote, even though these players were otherwise able to continue to play and the outcomes of the games were thereafter in doubt, according to the league statement. Tanking in the NBA is real. This punishment is not. $500,000 for a team that made $340 million last season is the rough financial equivalent of you or I getting a slap on the wrist for a speeding ticket. Seriously, do the math. Is $500,000 going to slow down any organization that's hell-bent on getting themselves a better shot at draft positioning via the lottery? Hell no. $500,000. If the NBA wants to get serious about punishing teams for tanking, they need to get serious about tying the punishments to the actual lottery results and the draft. And no, we don't need to talk about some wild overhaul of the system or the lottery only applying to the top 3 teams or the idea of locking the standings for the lottery with a month left in the regular season or even the moronic concept of doing away with the draft altogether. Come on. Tell me you live in New York or LA without telling me you live in New York or LA. It's actually very simple. If you are found guilty of tanking, as the Utah Jazz have been by the league, then your punishment should be that your lottery chances are diminished. You finish with one of the 3 worst records in the league, and should have a 14% chance at the number 1 overall pick, great. Now your odds are cut in half. It's 7%. And that protection you had of not dropping any lower than 4th in the first round, that's hollowed out too. Now you can drop as low as 7th or 8th. Put some teeth in the punishment, man. $500,000 is nothing for an NBA franchise. This isn't hard to figure out. Tie the punishment to what they're actually trying to accomplish by their misdeeds. Friend of the program, Nick Friedell, will join us at 11:20 Eastern to kick around this idea some more. Finally.
1.
And you have to educate them on, you have this baby in the middle of the season. That father has to play good football, right? It's a day-by-day production business. He has to be ready to perform and go out there and play. And when I say that is, you need to let him sleep. He needs to be in another room, detached. You have to explain to the mother, like, hey, listen, he ain't waking up for midnight feedings. After the season, he's full metal jacket. You do whatever you want with him. And he can change every diaper. But in the season, he's got to have a different priority.
That's Ole Miss assistant football coach Joe Judge. Speaking of our friends in New York, you remember Joe Judge. I don't know, maybe you've wiped them from your memory banks, Giants fans. I had to listen to this. This is during testimony during one of these Trinidad Chambliss hearings over his appeal for further eligibility. How we got down the path of Joe Judge talking about players with pregnant girlfriends and how they can't change diapers, that's on Joe Judge. When Lane Kiffin is quote tweeting a video and face palming it saying, oh, Joe, you probably did something wrong. I had to listen to it a few times to make sure this wasn't satire. Joe Judge basically said, if a player has a baby during football season, don't expect him to help much at home. So football now outranks diapers and bottles. Okay. Sorry, honey, I'd love to help, but I got film to watch. Sorry. Yo, you haven't slept in 3 days? My bad. It's cool. I got to go. I'm going to be at the facility lifting. There's a newborn in your house. You are the father of that newborn. Hate to break it to you, but you were you were integrally involved in the process of how that newborn came to be. Okay? You're not locked in if you're not helping out at least a little bit at home. This is that old school football mindset. Real men don't change diapers. They change blocking schemes. You know where the safety is. You know where the mic is. Identify the mic, son. Like it's 1967 and everybody's firing up lung darts in the locker room at halftime. Imagine trying to sell that at home. Yeah, you'll get the detachment Coach Judge was looking for when you're detached on the couch or not even allowed in the house. And the part that kills me is this old school line of thinking, helping at home makes you soft somehow because you're not getting as much sleep or you're not recovering. You know what makes you soft? Mentally, especially, fighting with your baby mama, constant stress, living in emotional chaos with a woman who's just given birth, is postpartum, and probably is sleeping at most 45 minutes at a time. It's not building toughness to avoid changing diapers. It's not getting you better prepared for the season. You're actually creating burnout on the back end of this thing. You're building resentment at home. You're building a situation where nothing is going to go well and you just want to get out of there. Maybe even enter the portal. Because let's be honest, if everything at home is falling apart, you're not focused on football in the first place. You're focused on survival. You're not locked in. You're locked out. You're sleeping on your buddy's couch. And listen, I get it. Football matters, especially when you're being paid a lot of money for it. Discipline matters. Commitment matters. But if a program says, ignore the newborn at home so you can dive into the playbook or get an extra hour of sleep, that's a red flag. Because someday football's going to end. I know some of you all think you're going to the league. You all think you're playing on Sundays. But most of you aren't. Football ends. The kid, he's there. And he's not old enough to remember who changed his diapers. But he's going to hear the stories about how mommy didn't sleep at all for the first 6 months. Dad wasn't around, but hey, he knew what blitz was coming. Congratulations, Hall of Fame dad. That and $5 will get you a beer at the Lions Den the next time you're back in town for homecoming. I mean, I can't even imagine what prompted Joe Judge to think that was a smart idea to share during this. All he had to do was give a simple statement about how important sleep is to recovering athletes. But he chose to go down the path of, hey, if you have a baby during the season, you probably shouldn't be staying up changing diapers. Otherwise, you're not ready for football, son. It's the SEC. It just means more. I'm curious what people think of that, because that may have been the most eye-opening thing I've seen in the last 24 hours at least. By all means, feel free to jump into the chat on YouTube, youtube.com/@thecostos. We are streaming there live, even though Nick is off. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports. You could be a part of the conversation, too, by just picking up the phone. Is Joe Judge insane, or does Joe Judge make a legitimate point? 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. I didn't think we'd be so Ole Miss heavy today, but here we are. Coming up, have we been looking at this Trinidad Chambliss thing all wrong? Prep your tinfoil hats, kids, because I have a theory next here on Westwood One Sports.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Get your tinfoil hats out, kids. I got a good one. I think I know what's going on with Trinidad Chambliss and why he doesn't want to go in the draft this year and needs to go back to Ole Miss for one more season. Maybe I'm digging too deep into this. Maybe the right answer is the easiest one. Or maybe, just maybe, it's not that 32 teams aren't interested. It's that one really is. We'll get into it in just a second here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today, right here on Westwood One Sports. You can be a part of the conversation at 310-840-4910, including your thoughts on what Joe Judge had to say yesterday. Well, I guess it wasn't yesterday, was it, the hearing? I don't know if that video was actually from yesterday or we just got to see it yesterday. Either way, Joe Judge basically saying, we tell players, significant others, that if they're going to have a baby during the football season, don't expect to see your partner while you're waking up from midnight feedings. He's got to sleep, so he's ready for ball, SAC. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail, too. A little more than an hour from now. Alex Gold from Kansas City going to join us at the top of the hour, 96.5 The Fan in KC, to talk about what may end up being the most interesting Chiefs offseason in years. Alex also co-hosts BetMGM Game Day Saturdays here on Westwood One Sports. Don't forget that Progressive Insurance can help you save on commercial auto insurance. You can get a fast quote right now at progressivecommercial.com. This segment of You Better You Bet, sponsored by Progressive. This was fantastic. I'm not usually a big Kendrick Perkins fan, okay? I think a lot of the stuff he says is nonsense, especially when they get him on the panel shows and they're basically asking you just to say nonsense. But he had a great line yesterday in talking about teams from the Eastern Conference of the NBA that he would keep an eye on down the stretch and into the playoffs.
Well, let me tell you this, Joe. It's three things that I'm scared of in life. And that's healthy foods, reality shows, and the Detroit Pistons right now, okay?
Bro,
I'm
what?
I'm terrified of the Detroit Pistons. This team is complete. They're physical, and they're scary. I got them coming out of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. Kendrick Perkins on ESPN's Get Up yesterday talking about the Pistons. I think, first of all, the line, there's only three things I'm afraid of: healthy food, reality shows, and the Detroit Pistons, is fantastic. Second of all, I think it's a really good point about the Pistons. It feels like the Knicks are always one injury away from not achieving what we all think they're capable of. The Celtics, I don't know. It feels like they're just in tune-up mode for the playoffs. Like, let's just get there. Let's just get them started, and then we'll figure it out from there once everybody's healthy and back and ready to go. The Cavs have James Harden. That eliminates them instantly, in my opinion. And from there, is there another championship caliber team in the East? I don't think so. Pistons have the best record in the conference and now a full 5.5 game lead over the Celtics, 6 over the Knicks. So it's not going out on a limb here by Perk to suggest that they should be in the NBA Finals. But I think it's a realization that a lot of us have been slow to come to because we just, again, like we talked about college basketball yesterday with Brad Evans, everybody is sort of slowly waking up from what was a 6-month binge of football to realize what's going on in college hoops and the NBA and whatever else you're interested in. And you go, oh, wait, no, the Pistons are legit. The Pistons are legit. Cade Cunningham is legit. And so I think it's a good point by Perk that a lot of people need to wake up to the idea that the Pistons are for real. If you haven't been paying attention to the NBA because you were buried under a mountain of football for the last 6 months and you're just now poking your head up out of the hole like a groundhog looking for his shadow, that shadow in the Eastern Conference is the Detroit Pistons. They've got a 5.5 game lead in the East. They are legit. And I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they were to end up in the NBA Finals. You check out BetMGM right now. I think it's plus 340 for the Pistons to win the East. I mean, they're right there with the Cavs and the Knicks at that number. Right there with the Celtics at some books. They're all within that 320 to 4-1 range, depending on which book you're looking at. Those are the four teams considered legit in the East. Why wouldn't you bet on the team that has the 5.5 game lead in the Eastern Conference to get home court through the East? And then, like I said, health of aging veteran teams in New York and Boston are a consideration. And the Cavs just added James Harden. Cross them off the list for me. They're done. We'll get into the NBA in a little bit more detail. Maybe we can ask Nick Friedell, NBA insider, what he thinks of the East, how he handicaps it, and just how serious he thinks the Pistons are when he joins us a little less than 2 hours from now, right around 11:20 a.m. Eastern here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports, live across North America on Sirius XM Channel 375. I have a tinfoil hat theory. Look, the quarterback market this offseason is bereft of talent. We'll get into that specifically as it relates to NFL quarterbacks, free agency, the possible comeback of Derek Carr a little bit later, about an hour from now. But as for the draft, we talked at length about Fernando Mendoza and what the Raiders should do with the first overall pick yesterday. Hugh Myers of Raiders Nation Radio will join us at 11 Eastern to give us his opinion on my thought that if you're the Raiders, you trade out of the top overall spot. You get a boatload of draft capital in return. You trade Max Crosby. You get a boatload of draft capital in return. You build out the rest of the roster before you worry about going out and getting your quarterback, because Fernando Mendoza is good. He had a great season this year, obviously. But I don't think in many other drafts, if any, Fernando Mendoza is a first overall pick. I don't see it. Maybe if everything goes Mendoza's way, I mean everything, he ends up being a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the NFL. But I think that's the absolute ceiling. And he's not going into a perfect situation in Vegas. We established that yesterday. It's going to be a mess, a terrible offensive line. New coaching staff. Alex Guerrero is running the wellness program, which apparently was part of what ticked off Max Crosby, the way Guerrero handled him at the end of the year. The Raiders are the Raiders still, and what the Raiders have been for the better part of the last 15 to 20 years. They're a mess. They're a mess. So Mendoza is not going into a great situation. The rest of the quarterback class, also a mess. Ty Simpson, in my opinion, not a first-round quarterback. Somebody will take him late in the first round. Somebody that thinks he can sit for a year and season behind an established starter will take him. My opinion, they'll probably end up being disappointed because they will have spent a first-round pick on a guy who is not first-round caliber. And then you get to your Nussmeyers, your Carson Becks. You know, the rest of the class, Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, you have underwhelming. The one question mark we've had about this quarterback class the entire time is Trinidad Chambliss going to be a part of it? Because there are people like me, I believe in Chambliss. I think at the next level, with the right system around him, I don't think he's a go anywhere and save the franchise kind of guy. But I think put him in the right system, with the right leadership, the right tutelage, give him a year or two of watching and learning. Chambliss is going to be very good at the NFL level. Again, I think the ceiling is kind of like Mendoza. At best, top 10 to top 12 quarterback in the NFL, if everything goes right. But what we're hearing, the intel from scouts and people in the draft community is, nobody's interested in him. He's a fifth-round pick, maybe. Third day, definitely. I don't see that after watching a lot of Trinidad Chambliss football this fall. I think the guy is a second-day pick. But apparently the rest of the NFL doesn't agree. Or maybe one team does. This is my tinfoil hat theory. Are you ready? What if the Jets secretly love Trinidad Chambliss? Right? What if Woody Johnson's grandson has been playing not just Madden, but college football 25 as well? And he's got a Trinidad Chambliss. He's got a season with Ole Miss, and he's enamored with them. Would it not surprise you at all if the Jets secretly have a first-round grade on Trinidad Chambliss, and while it hasn't become public knowledge quite yet, it's gotten to Trinidad Chambliss and his representatives, and they've looked at Trinidad Chambliss and said, Trin, you cannot go to New York. Your career will be over before it starts. And Trinidad Chambliss said, no, I know. I cannot go to New York. And that's why he's so hell-bent on spending another year in Oxford, Mississippi. Now, look, the more likely answer is the one that's laid out right in front of us, which is, I haven't had a ton of starts under my belt. I want to get some more experience. I want to go from being the third-day pick that a lot of scouts and evaluators think I am to really solidly becoming a second-day pick, maybe even a first-rounder if I have a great year. That's more likely, and that's the one that makes more sense. But would it surprise you at all if the New York Jets, because they're the Jets, were interested in doing something stupid and drafting Trinidad Chambliss second overall, and somehow Chambliss has found that out, and now Chambliss is like, no, sorry, I got to go back to school next year. It's a little tinfoil hat-ish, but I think it's a possibility. I mean, I would do the same. If someone came to me and said, hey, you have a promising future, young man, and the New York Jets are interested in your service, I wouldn't even let them finish the word services. I would run out of the building. I would run through a plate glass window rather than find the nearest door and leave that silhouette through the glass that you get in cartoons. I wouldn't blame anybody for avoiding the Jets. So it's a conspiracy theory, but it's one that I like anyway, because couldn't we see that happening? Chambliss does somehow end up in the draft, and the Jets walk up there, Roger Goodell with that card. Wouldn't shock any of us. It's the Jets. Coming up, if you're not actually properly punished for doing something wrong, what's stopping you from doing it again? I have an idea for how we can get teams to stop tanking in the NBA. That's next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
know what? The NBA All-Star Game has a chance to save itself this weekend. But as always, it's up to the players. That's who it's up to. It's not up to whatever format or whatever kind of rules we want to have or whatever the state of the league is around the game. It's up to the players, man. It's how much effort are they going to put in, right? If you get a Kobe Bryant type effort, if you get a Magic Johnson type effort, you get a Michael Jordan type effort from these players, then you're going to have a great game. And you're going to have a great product. You're going to have a fun, interesting game that's compelling, that's exciting, that's competitive, and that's entertaining. And that's all we want to see. All we want to see is some effort. There's no magic formula. There's no recreating the wheel. It's just about playing with effort. Treating the game like it matters. Treating like you have millions of people watching.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
If we're going to punish people for tanking, let's really actually punish them and really make it punitive. Talk about the Utah Jazz in just a second, because $500,000 ain't doing it for a team that makes $300 million. Also, quick Olympic hockey update, because you guys know I'm a puckhead. Puck, I said with a P, P-U-C-K. I'm a puckhead. And I'm just going to double down on something I said yesterday about this Olympic hockey tournament based on what I've seen through the first game, or in some cases two for some countries. We just were talking about this during the break, though, and I want to bring it back up. This Melbourne game that's going to open the season in the NFL, there's some news about that. But whether you're watching the action on the field, the pitch as it may be, the court, the ice, you want to remember the most exciting moments long after the final whistle. Betting with boosted odds inside your BetMGM app can get you started on that journey. Activate your odds boost token on any sports bet, and you'll receive a bigger payout if you win. Grab your token. Elevate your excitement with BetMGM. Make it legendary. Download the BetMGM app today. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM and on Westwood One Sports, inside the Westwood One Sports app and live across North America on SiriusXM Channel 375. You want to be a part of the conversation, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910, or jump into the chat on the YouTube. YouTube.com/@thekostos, TheKostos. It's being reported by John Ourand of Puck that the Niners-Rams game in Melbourne, Australia will be played week 1, quite possibly to kick off the entire NFL season. So there's Wednesday, September 9th, and Thursday, September 10th. Those 2 days are going to be used to kick off the season. Now, the Seattle Seahawks just won the Super Bowl, so they get a home game to open the season, but it may not be the very first game of the season, as it traditionally has been for the better part of 10 or 15 years now in the NFL schedule. And we still don't know who Seattle's opponent would be for that either, obviously. We'll learn that in a couple of months as we inch closer toward schedule reveal in early May. But this Niners-Rams game scheduled for Melbourne will be one of those 2 days, either Wednesday, September 9th, or Thursday, September 10th, and will be broadcast by one of the streamers that the NFL has an agreement with. Netflix, Prime, who knows? We'll see where it goes. All still to be determined. But the Seahawks, the Super Bowl champs, may not actually kick off the NFL season. The team they beat in the NFC Championship game may kick off the season. And another division rival. Okay. For what it's worth, even if they play on primetime and Wednesday night, it'll be Thursday afternoon in Melbourne. 16-hour time difference. Before we punish the Utah Jazz appropriately for this tanking nonsense, we're 1 or 2 games into the men's Olympic hockey tournament, and for now, we've gotten exactly what we expected, I think, especially out of the Canadian and U.S. teams. Fairly emphatic victories over second and third tier teams. The impressive part, Canada got goaltending. Jordan Binnington had a nice game. They won 5-0 over Czechia. The Americans, they showed some silky smooth mitts. A couple of goals that they used to pull away from Latvia late in the second, early in the third period yesterday. Canada's back in action this afternoon against Switzerland. Could get interesting. The Swiss are better than you would think. Should end with another Canadian W, though. The U.S. gets the day off, and then they go back-to-back tomorrow and Sunday against Denmark and Germany, respectively. Again, they should have at least one of those games that may be interesting because Leon Draisaitl leads the Germans. But both squads, Canada and the U.S., should be undefeated in pool play. And for those of you that have only been paying attention to the U.S. and Canada, hey, it's Olympic hockey. It only comes around every 4 years. Maybe it's not your jam. I don't blame you. The most interesting part of these first few days may have been Finland looking rough in their first game, but bouncing back against a Swedish team that got pushed by Italy for 45 minutes before finally closing in their opener. All of which adds up to, it's never been clearer to me, as I said yesterday, gold and silver will be Canada and the U.S. in some combination. My bet is on the U.S. at BetMGM to win silver because I don't think they made enough adjustments and changes from the Four Nations face-off last year. But U.S. and Canada are way up here, and the second tier is down here. Sweden, Finland, Czechia, Germany, Switzerland, all battling for bronze. That's your quick Olympic hockey update. Again, the U.S. does not play until tomorrow. Canadians play this afternoon. Let's hammer the Utah Jazz in a way that actually matters. This tanking punishment, $500,000 for pulling Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr. out of the fourth quarter of competitive games last week. $500,000. I like to do this when we talk about big sums of money. I like to break it down and create an equation where you figure out how much that would mean for you or I, right? Like the Jazz make $320 million in revenue last year. $500,000 is the equivalent of you or I paying a speeding ticket. Is that going to keep you from ever speeding again? No. Maybe for a couple of weeks you slow it down, right? And your eyes dart to the side for those speed traps a little bit more. You got the Waze pulled up so you can see where the reports of the cops are. But after a while, you start speeding again. This punishment against the Utah Jazz, $500,000 fine, may cause some teams to tap the brakes just a little bit through that speed trap. But it's not going to stop anyone from tanking. You want to stop teams from tanking? Tie the punishment directly to their chances of actually winning the lottery. because that's what they're trying to accomplish when they tank. They want to be one of those 3 teams, preferably, who has a 14% chance of landing the first overall pick. If you're going to find a team guilty of tanking, and you believe you have indisputable proof that they are trying to lose games, then you punish them as such. And you hit them where it hurts the most, not in the pocketbook. These are NBA teams. They're bottomless vats of money. You punish them by having their lottery chances at the end of the year. Oh, you finish with one of the 3 worst records? You think you should have a 14% chance at the first overall pick? Sorry, remember that tanking case? Your lottery odds are cut in half. You have a 7% chance now. That's the way you keep teams from tanking. Maybe it's not foolproof, but I think it makes a whole hell of a lot more sense than finding an NBA team $500,000. They're literally doing the Razor Ramon Scott Hall hands at you. Ooh, 500,000. Ooh. We don't need to make the cutoff for the lottery a month before the end of the regular season for the standings. We don't need to get rid of the draft. We don't need to have a tournament among lottery teams to determine draft order. We don't need to get rid of the lottery. The lottery still works. What we need to do is punish teams that tank by actually hitting them where it matters most to them. Slash their lottery odds. We'll talk to Nick Friedell, NBA insider, in the final hour of the show about what he thinks of that idea. Coming up, the Kansas City Chiefs may have one of the most interesting off seasons in years on deck. We'll talk to Alex Gold of 96.5 The Fan in Kansas City about it next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
I think Vanderbilt you got to look at first and foremost. A team that is hitting the skids a little bit right now. They have lost 4 of their last 7 games. They lost Oklahoma. They were getting absolutely killed in that game. They made almost an incredible historic comeback as the Sooners nearly choked it in the final 2 minutes of the game. But Oklahoma still escaped with a 1-point win, 92-91 inside Memorial Coliseum. You know, Vandy was a feel-good kind of surprise story. Mark Bennington's done an excellent job there. But they're right now number 14 net, nothing, to scoff at there. 6-3 in quarter 1, 5-2 on the road. But they're only number 33 in Barts over the last 30 days. They're 183 EFG offense, 213 EFG defense. They're a smaller team, They're struggling through some health issues right now. It's going to be a tough road. They got to go at Auburn coming up tomorrow night. So we'll see what version of the Commodores that we get. And BYU is the other team. They lose to Houston, and they lose convincingly by double figures. Credit to Houston, very tough team to play, but BYU is certainly regressed. They're only number 49 in Toric the last 30 days, and even worse defensively. I remember, talking about the ills of the Carolina Tar Heels. Well, BYU's 317 in the country in effective field goal percentage defense over the last 8 days. As good as DeBonce is, Richie Saunders is, Kibaka's got to step up his game in the interior. They're getting crushed inside. They're not getting out and challenging shots effectively outside. BYU looking like a 6 seed, and that might be generous come Selection Sunday. They're trending very much in the wrong direction.
It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. You can watch the show on YouTube. YouTube.com/@thecostos, THEKOSTOS. And while you're there, drop a comment about everything we've discussed to this point, how to actually punish the Jazz effectively for the tanking that the NBA has now found them at fault for. We'll talk to Nick Friedell, NBA insider, about that in about an hour and 20 minutes. More NFL offseason news every single day. Derek Carr might be making a comeback. Is there anywhere that makes sense for Derek Carr or anyone that may be interested? And this Joe Judge thing may actually have real football impact. I'll tell you how and why before the end of the hour here on You Better You Bet. But one of the most interesting off seasons in maybe the last decade is on deck in Kansas City. Who better to talk to about it than a guy in Kansas City from 96.5 The Fan in KC. And, of course, he hosts BetMGM Game Day every Saturday here on Westwood One Sports. Alex Gold joins us here on You Better You Bet. Morning, Alex. How are you, man?
Hey, good morning. You're right about that, though. It's just offseason. We haven't had one of these in a while. We've been spoiled in Kansas City, so this is uncharted territory for a lot of Chiefs fans. They got to go way back to where they had an offseason with this much at stake.
Yeah, and it feels like there are some tendencies here that are leaning toward getting the band back together, and then there are some question marks about, well, how much of the band is actually coming back, and they're all big, bold questions to be asked about the Chiefs' offseason. I want to start, obviously, with I think the most important question is Patrick Mahomes and his readiness for the start of the 2026 season. It's obviously still really early in his rehab process. But how are the Chiefs planning for every eventuality around that? and whether they may have to start the season without Mahomes or not.
So as you would expect, there's plenty of confidence among the fan base and among the organization and Patrick Mahomes right now, as we said in February, that, he's actually going to be available by week 1 of the season. I think it's easy to say at this point in time, this far out, that you're going to be ready week 1, and I have no doubt he's going to do everything possible. But as you know, you really don't know until you start getting back on a football field. You get into maybe closer to training camp. I think that will tell us a lot. And I also think the Chiefs' actions with who they bring in to be the backup. Last year it was Gardner Minshew. He thought he was going to have his opportunity when Mahomes went down, and then he suffered a knee injury. At the time, everybody believed that was an ACL. It turned out to not be one. So he's available. He's a familiar face and a name that's familiar with this system. And so to me, if they go and spend more money than they have in the past on a backup, I think that would tell me a lot, Chris, about their confidence level that somebody's got to start a week or two, and so you look at the backup quarterback pool. I mean, some names, I guess, are more exciting than others, but right now you go and ask any Chiefs fan, they're telling you he's playing week 1.
Yeah, there's, when you're in Kansas City, you're allowed to have an inordinate amount of confidence, right? Like the way things have gone for the last decade, you're allowed to feel good about everything until it actually collapses around you. But the NFL is better if Patrick Mahomes is playing from week 1, and the Chiefs obviously are better too. What about Travis Kelce? Is there a firm determination, do you think, about what he wants to do going forward and whether there is any real consideration to walking away, or is he all in, locked in on being back in 2026?
I certainly think there's consideration for him to not come back and play, but all the momentum is trending toward him coming back here in 2026. He had talked on his podcast, of course, New Heights, a couple weeks back, saying, this is not about his desire to play. It's whether or not his body can handle it. Does he want to go through the grind of an offseason, going up to training camp and dealing with, remember, Kansas City, they live up in dorms for 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, do you want to deal with that and deal with the humidity and heat of a training camp? And can you make it through a season? He talks so much about the work he put in a year ago, where if you guys watched him this year, he was actually a little more spry, I would argue, than he was the year prior. And so it's not a desire. It's truly whether or not he thinks he can hold up. But right now, I think it would almost be a surprise if he's not back in 26. And this is where the fan base is split in Kansas City on Kelce. No surprise, he's a fan favorite, future Hall of Famer. This guy has done so much in this city and still does in the community and will for a long time, I believe. But I don't think this offense should run through him next year. And this is where people disagree, because they'll look at the numbers and say, what do you mean? He put up a lot of numbers. He's a top 5 tight end in football. And by no means do I think he is washed. I just don't think at this stage of his career, you want an offense running through him. He had around 108 targets. And I think that needs to be scaled back a little bit to where he's an important piece, sure, and someone that Mahomes trusts, but the offense needs to run through a Rashee Rice, for example, or if they end up spending a number 9 overall pick on a wide receiver.
So what is the answer then for the offense in totality, Alex? Because they bring Eric Bieniemy back, and I think a lot of people in Kansas City may just look at that and say, okay, Nagy out, Bieniemy in, we're good, everything's solved. Doesn't matter who the receivers are, doesn't matter how old Kelce is, doesn't matter if we figure out the running back room or not. We got EB back. I'd imagine there's a lot of positivity about that move, but is there a belief that short of, like you said, drafting a wide receiver in the first round or a couple other additions around the periphery on the offense, that should solve their issues?
So Eric Bieniemy, it's weird how it's changed. Matt Nagy became a villain almost to a certain extent in Kansas City. And even nationally, I feel like you mentioned his name and everybody just kind of talks like this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And I'm in the minority on this, I think, and I have, whether it's on this network or even locally, I think there's way more nuance that's required with what happened with the offense when he took over compared to where it was when Eric Bieniemy was the OC. The league has just shifted, right? I mean, whether it's playing the Chiefs with 2 high safety looks, whether it's that running back is more valuable now than it was 3 years ago. They had Tyreek Hill in that offense. So I can go on and on and on. I don't think it was just a Matt Nagy issue, although I think they had to move on from him. Eric Bieniemy is kind of the safe hire to bring back, but I think this team did lack discipline, and I'm not talking about having penalties all over the place. They've always been a heavily penalized team under Andy Reid, going back even to years when they win the Super Bowl. But I'm talking about lazy route running, doing your job, and just the basic stuff that what you would expect the coach to do. They kind of lacked in that area. Eric Bieniemy is gonna hold you accountable, and so that is a huge asset that I think he brings to the table. Plus the running knowledge. He was with Ben Johnson last year, and people here at least are hoping that maybe he picked up a thing or two with that run scheme, that they can be more effective. And I think it's more personnel based. But a lot of this offense, guys, I think is on Andy Reid. We can talk about the OC all we want. We know who's calling plays. This is Andy Reid's offense, and the question people have been having here is, all right, is the game catching up to Andy Reid, or has it passed Andy Reid by? And this is the year that is going to decide that. Now, it might sound crazy to people outside of here where they say, what do you mean? They were just in the Super Bowl for 3 straight years. Now they have one bad year. Now suddenly he doesn't know what he's doing. But that's the conversation. And this year, if they miss the playoffs again, guys, I'm telling you, I don't know if the Chiefs will part ways with him, but fan base, there will be plenty of people that will say in Kansas City, it's time to move on.
Alex Gold of Cody and Gold on 96.5 The Fan in Kansas City. Also, every Saturday here on Westwood One Sports with BetMGM Game Day, talking Chiefs offseason with us. What about the idea we've heard thrown out there about talk about putting the band back together, bringing back a Tyreek Hill? Don't know how healthy he'll be for this year, but trying to find more weapons for this offense. We mentioned the running back room earlier. Pacheco and Hunt were underwhelming, other than a few glimpses here and there. Is it about simply Andy Reid retooling how this offense works, or is it about bringing in different, maybe more talented personnel?
Personnel-wise, on the running back side, I think is honestly the biggest issue they had there, guys. Yeah, we can talk run scheme a little bit. Isaiah Pacheco, they got a lot out of him. Look, this guy was a 7th-round pick. I mean, he wasn't a bust or anything. He was a 7th-round pick, and he provided him a couple great years, but he just didn't have it anymore. Kareem Hunt was actually really effective in short yardage, but that's all he should be, is short yardage. They drafted a rookie last year, Brashard Smith, out of SMU, and they refused to use him. And so I think most fans, and the thought here is that you address running back in free agency, a Breece Hall. I personally am interested in Tyler Algier paired up with a 2nd or 3rd round running back. There's some fans that want them to spend the 9th overall pick on Jeremiah Love. I think that would be a mistake, but that's certainly in discussion if they don't sign a free agent running back. So I think it's personnel running back wise. Otherwise, I honestly do think it's scheme and coaching. Look, this is probably going in the weeds a little too much for the audience, but they had a wide receiver coach that they moved on from who had no business and was not qualified to be a wide receiver coach. They go and get a veteran in Chad O'Shea who coached guys like Randy Moss and Julian Edelman and on and on and on. They bring in a running back coach, DeMarco Murray, who actually played the position and knows what he's doing. They had Todd Pinkston, who was just a former player for Andy Reid that was a wide receiver coaching running backs last year. So I think they have certainly gone after experienced guys now this offseason with the coaching staff. And they got to go under center more. They really do. You look at the 4 teams that were in the conference championship games. Those quarterbacks, 3 of the 4 quarterbacks were all toward the top of the league in touchdown passes under center. And so I think it's a combination of both. And the wide receivers, other than maybe bringing in one veteran, Chris, I mean, it's Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. They're going to have to develop these guys, and that's where it's really hurt them. Xavier Worthy just has not developed the way everybody was hoping.
I'm curious because I am a huge fan of Jeremiah Love. Why you have pause on him as a possibility? Is it just there's other things that are more important to address with that 1st-round pick, or you're not sold on Love specifically?
Yeah, this is more about the Chiefs than it is Jeremiah Love. I think I believe fundamentally just on position value, running back, I think you can go and get a top-tier free agent back for $9 million a year, roughly. Let's say maybe Breece Hall gets 11 if we're being fair, but Algier might be $4 million a year or something. So I would build my team that way. That's just more of a personal thing. The other part is if you draft Jeremiah Love at 9 overall, guys, he has to me immediately be a top 5 running back in football. Immediately. There's no, no, right away. He's got to eventually be a Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got to eventually be a Bijan Robinson. And maybe he is. And if this is where they get paid to get it right. If they truly believe that that's who he is, then fine, go ahead and draft him. But he has to be that kind of back, in my opinion, if you're going to go at number 9 overall. Truly, I think they got to build on the defensive side. The defensive line, they struggled to get after the quarterback last year. Chris Jones is aging here. They did not have a complementary piece to go with him or George Karlaftis. So, I would personally say go running back free agency and then address the defensive line if David Bailey's there or Ruben Bain is there at 9.
You mentioned the issues on defense, at least up front, Alex. They've got multiple free agents on that side of the ball, too. What are they retaining all of them? Are they looking to move on from some of these guys? You mentioned Chris Jones is starting to age out. Karlaftis has hit his stride, though, I think. What is the outlook for this defense in the offseason?
They got some guys they're going to clearly move on from. I think, they're up against it. The cap, yes, it's not real. It is real. We can debate that and all that, but they got some moves they got to make. They're about $58 million over, so I think they'll cut somebody like a Mike Dana. I don't think he'll be back. Charles Omenihu was a massive disappointment. He came back on a one-year deal. He was non-existent. I think most of that defensive line is going to be gone. I think Chris Jones, Karlaftis, Omar Norman Lutz was a rookie this past year, got hurt. Ashton Gelati was a rookie last year. Those guys are back. And then I think they're going to sign a veteran or two plus draft somebody, whether it's in the first round or otherwise. So there's going to be a lot of new pieces there on the defensive line. And then Jalen Watson is actually one of the top free agent corners available. There's some thought that maybe the Chiefs would bring him back. He had a very good contract year, but what's their decision with Trent McDuffie? We haven't talked about him, Chris. That's probably going to change potentially the path for them this offseason. McDuffie, top corner in the league. They can play this out for a couple years. They got the fifth-year option. They could tag him even in a couple years if they wanted to, but they have not signed into a long-term extension. And so there's a lot of debate in Kansas City whether or not they should look to actually trade Trent to try to add some more picks and move forward, or do you eventually give him an extension? And so that's one to watch. If they know they're not giving an extension to McDuffie at some point, then maybe they are willing to bring back somebody like Jalen Watson.
I think the number I saw that they're over the cap going into 26 is something like 61, 62 million.
Yeah.
Are there restructure candidates, and who would they be to restructure to sort of kick that can down the road, which is always an issue with an aging team, as you mentioned? Kelsey, Jones, Mahomes, believe it or not, is actually, by NFL quarterback standards anyway, more than halfway through his career.
Look, they've been up against it because they were all in the last couple of years. They were in 3 straight Super Bowls, and so it's time to pay the price, though, a little bit. What you're saying, you're way over on the cap, and so I am, looking at the 2026 season, frankly, as more of a make a push for a wild card spot. And I know that sounds crazy to people. You got Patrick Mahomes. What do you mean it's not Super Bowl or bust? And people disagree with me in Kansas City, but I think they can set themselves up a lot better for 2027 if they're willing to deal with some of the financial repercussions now. What I'm talking about is like Chris Jones has a $40+ million cap hit. I don't want to kick the can down the road on Chris Jones. I'm going to eat the $44 million, play it out, and that way I'm good in 27. That's how I would proceed. But yes, there's a lot of restructure candidates. They can free up about $70 million pretty quickly. If they want to restructure fully the Mahomes deal, and I don't know if they'll do all of it, there's $44 million they could actually free up just by doing something with Patrick Mahomes. Trey Smith, the offensive guard, who they signed to a new deal last year, who they like, they could restructure that and save, I think, anywhere from $7 to $8 million this year. Jawan Taylor's an offensive tackle that they're likely going to cut. They're going to have to eat $7 million, but they could save $20 million. There's a lot of candidates that they could actually free. Drew Tranquil, a linebacker who they may not bring back. There's a couple $1 million there. So they can do it in about 5 or 6 moves, but I think they're going to have to pay the price a little bit for being as all in as they had been the last 5 years.
Alex Gold of Cody and Gold on 96.5 The Fan in KC with us here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. He also hosts BetMGM Game Day Saturdays on Westwood One Sports. Catch him tomorrow, 11 Eastern, doing BetMGM Game Day. One last thing before I let you run, Alex. You mentioned the fans earlier, and there's this sort of bubbling enthusiasm when you've had as much success as the Chiefs have had over the last decade. Is that still in existence there, or is there a little bit of an undercurrent of aging team like we talked about? Maybe Andy Reid has lost his fastball a little bit. We've got to maximize the now and get whatever we can out of now before this thing does hit a cliff. Or is this, not to deride Chiefs fans, it's not meant as an insult, is this lemmings heading toward the cliff, toward the sea, and they're like, no, we're always full speed ahead on positivity. We believe this was a blip on the radar, and we're good in 26. Let's go. Let's get another ring.
There's certainly a fraction of the fan base that thinks that it was kind of fluky and they're going to be right back at the top immediately. Look what happened in the AFC, and look at, Drake May making it to the playoffs, and the fact that it was the Broncos in the AFC title game and Sam Darnold won a Super Bowl. There's definitely that thought. Call it arrogance if you want, but oh, come on. That's really who everybody's going up against. There's definitely a chunk of people that feel that way. There's also, I think, a little bit of real panic and concern. People are questioning Andy Reid, and fair or not, after 1 year, there are people here that are saying, all right, they brought back Eric Bieniemy. Is this offense just gotten stale? Is he able to truly adjust? And that's why this year is just so massive, not only to get back to the playoffs and all that, but hey, are they going to be needing to truly look for a new head coach in a year or two, because this thing has just passed him by? And so these are real conversations. I mean, everybody still fully believes, of course, in Patrick Mahomes, and most people think he's ready to go week one. But there definitely is a feeling that maybe, just maybe, it's time for a big shakeup moving forward for the 2026 season and beyond.
Great stuff, Alex. Really appreciate your time. Check him out on 96.5 The Fan in KC, and, of course, every weekend here on BetMGM Game Day, Saturday mornings on Westwood One Sports. Alex Gold, thanks again for the time, man.
Hey, thanks, Chris.
Absolutely. Interesting insights there. I increasingly get the feeling that while Chiefs fans have this constant undercurrent of positivity, which, if I were a fan of that team after the last decade, I'd have that constant undercurrent of positivity too. But I really wonder if simply bringing back Eric Bieniemy and making a couple of moves on the periphery as far as offensive talent goes is enough. Especially because there's a great point Alex made. Bieniemy holds people accountable, right? And there's been a little bit of a lack of discipline on the offensive side of the ball, especially. Well, after a couple of years without bad cop in the building and only good cops, are these guys who've had a ton of success over the course of their careers necessarily going to respond to bad cop again when he marches back into the building after a few years away from him? Maybe they look at it and say, hey, we didn't make the playoffs this year. We lost the Super Bowl the year before. We need this guy back. But I think it's much more likely that sandpaper edge that Bieniemy always carries with him and the way he handles players, I don't know if that polishes things in Kansas City. I think it might just make it a little bit more rough. And especially if they've got to go a couple of weeks at the beginning of the year without Patrick Mahomes, you get him back, recovering from a major injury like that always takes a calendar year at least. I could definitely see, as Cody said there, maybe a wild card appearance, but another bump in the road and maybe even missing the playoffs for the Chiefs, which, as he pointed out, might make Andy Reid's seat hot, even in a place like Kansas City where they've had a ton of success. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM, live across North America on SiriusXM Channel 375, always inside your Westwood One Sports app. Coming up, this below-average quarterback market this offseason could be rapidly accelerating towards becoming average, maybe slightly less above average. I don't know, but somebody's exploring a comeback. And is anybody actually going to be interested in him? That's next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
I think Vanderbilt, you got to look at first and foremost. A team that is hitting the skids a little bit right now. They have lost now 4 of their last 7 games. They lost Oklahoma. They were getting absolutely killed in that game. They made almost an incredible historic comeback as the Sooners nearly choked it in the final 2 minutes of the game. But Oklahoma still escaped with a 1-point win, 92-91 inside Memorial Coliseum. You know, Vandy was the feel-good kind of surprise story. Mark Bennington's done an excellent job there. But they're right now number 14 net, nothing, to scoff at there. 6-3 in quarter 1, 5-2 on the road. But they're only number 33 in Barts over the last 30 days. They're 183 EFG offense, 213 EFG defense. They're a smaller team. They're struggling through some health issues right now. It's going to be a tough road. They got to go at Auburn coming up tomorrow night. So we'll see what version of the Commodores that we get. And BYU is the other team. They lose to Houston. And they lose convincingly by double figures. Credit to Houston, very tough team to play, but BYU is certainly regressed. They're only number 49 in Torrey the last 30 days, and even worse defensively. I remember, talking about the ills of the Carolina Tar Heels. Well, BYU's 317 in the country in effective field goal percentage defense over the last 8 days. As good as DeBonce is, Richie Saunders is, Kibaka's got to step up his game in the interior. They're getting crushed inside. They're not getting out and challenging shots effectively outside. BYU looking like a 6 seed, and that might be generous come Selection Sunday. They're trending very much in the wrong direction.
Third and goal. Carr for Waller, went up and got it. Got the touchdown. Got ourselves a ball game.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Derek Carr is entertaining a return to the NFL after a year off. But why? I feel like that meme. If he comes back, where should he be looking to go? He says only places where he could win a Super Bowl. I'm sorry, you're Derek Carr. You get to dictate those terms. But who should be interested, if anybody is? We'll get into that in just a second, because I have one team in mind. One team and one team only that I think makes sense for a possible marriage with Carr in the short term. And I brought this team up a couple weeks ago about another quarterback. It's going to seem like I'm just trying to ship them with veteran quarterbacks all offseason, but, well, maybe I am. Anyway, before we get into that, I saw this story last night. They had a pop-up bar in Hell's Kitchen the last couple nights that is exclusively for people dining with AI partners. It was called Ava AI Cafe at Same Wine Bar in Hell's Kitchen. I saw this story last night, and I immediately thought to myself, I'm not trying to be an old man here, I promise, but I don't think this is an old man thing. What are we doing? Seriously. I come from that weird generation that is between Gen X and millennials, right? I saw a story about this once. They call them Zennials, Xennials, where you didn't grow up. You grew up in an analog society, right? And you didn't even have internet in the house when you were a kid in the mid-'80s, right? All the way up through the mid-'90s in many places. And then all of a sudden, social media exploded while you were in your late teens, early 20s. So I am adaptable to a lot of different developing technologies. You know, a lot of us, Tyler and I were talking before the show, there was this big story that came out on Twitter a couple days ago. This guy that works in tech wrote a big, long, massive, had to be a 4,000-word piece about the development of AI and how it's coming even faster than most of us anticipate. Like the things that you expect will be AI generated or, you know, have some level of AI in them in 10 years. That's happened in like 2 or 3 years. It's coming a whole lot fast. But AI dates, is there anybody that can explain this to me, please? 310-840-4910. 310-840-4910 or in the YouTube chat as well at The Costos, youtube.com/@TheCostos. What do you do? Do you take your phone and sit it in a docking station across from you at the table and you talk to your Chat GPT or your OpenAI or whatever it may be? Is there a face? Do you have one of those real dolls with like a chip implanted in it? I don't want to get too technical with exactly how it works, but like, exactly how does this work? I'm sorry. What do you do? Bill, we're similar in age. What do you do if you walk into a bar or restaurant and you see not just one person, like one person sitting at a table with a phone across from them? You kind of quickly explain away in your brain is, it's a little odd. Maybe they're watching a TV show, though, or what? They just stopped in to eat. I don't know. But you look around and multiple people are having dinner on Valentine's Day with their AI companions. I feel like I've walked into some sort of alternate universe.
Yeah, this isn't for me. I walk into that kind of situation, I'm going to freak out a little bit. I'm going to just be like, what is happening here? Did I walk into a different year? What's going on? Like this is, what is that Pixar? WALL-E, you know, where all the people are just like buried into their phones. They don't even know humans are around anymore. This is like, I think I'm a pretty forward thinker, and I'm not like against AI here or anything, but like if you're dating AI, like this is where I'm going to become an old man. I can see it happening in my future. This is the pivot point where people are just going to be like, this is my AI girlfriend. I'm going to be like, no, this is just your phone. Stop it. Date a person.
Yeah.
Like, this is a problem for me. I don't even know where to go with this.
And it's odd to me that I think younger generations are realizing how fast it's happening faster than us. Like my daughter is going to be 17 next month. And my wife loves to use Chat GPT for everything. She wants to buy a new dining room table. She Chat GPTs a photo of the room and gets suggestions from Chat GPT on what kind of table would look best. And my daughter actually said to her one night last week or the week before, she said, "You're not polite to it, are you? You're not like giving it sentient feelings, are you? You don't say please and thank you, do you?" And my wife was like, "Well, yeah, and it's kind of nice. It says please and thank you back." And my daughter's like, "You can't do that. You're going to make it more aware. You're going to ruin it." The kids know, Bill. They know what's coming.
Yeah, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger and Terminator. They're learning, they're becoming more human. They're learning from us. Like, yeah, this is eventually. By the way, when the robots blew up the world in Terminator, I think it was like the year 2028. So let's be careful with AI here. It's coming.
We're not far off. We're not far off. Yep. T1000 is right around the corner. If I see Robert Patrick sprinting down the street like this with his metal arm regenerating, I'm out. I'm just out. We'll get into some other NFL offseason questions at the top of the hour with Q Myers of Raider Nation Network and Las Vegas Sports Radio, because we had some pretty interesting ideas. At least I did. I may have gone off the reservation a bit about the Raiders yesterday, and I want to hear what Q has to say. But a former Raiders quarterback is discussing coming back after a couple years in New Orleans and a year off. Derek Carr is expressing an interest in coming back to the NFL. But he told his brother David on their podcast, Homegrown, that he's got to be healthy. And his brother sort of winked and nodded and said, I know you're healthy. And it's got to be for a team that has a chance to win. Right? He's got to compete for a Super Bowl. First of all due respect to Derek Carr, because he wasn't terrible at the end. He wasn't. He was 5-5 his last season, only threw 5 picks in 10 games. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't very good either. This is the perfect offseason where if Derek Carr does want to jump back in, now's the time to do it, bud. Look at that available quarterback market this offseason. Because when we start to talk about those available quarterbacks, where does Derek Carr rank? I mean, he's probably, I say with a big question mark at the end, probably not a better option than Kyler Murray. Probably, question mark. He's a better option than Tua, I think. Also, a small question mark at the end of that. Better option than Kirk Cousins. Better option than Malik Willis. Like, I'm not as far out on Derek Carr if we're looking at it in relation to the rest of this offseason's quarterback market. Like, this is a team I brought up about Kyler a couple weeks ago when I was guest hosting for Nick here on You Better You Bet. If the Minnesota Vikings said, hey, we're not sold on J.J. McCarthy, but maybe another year of sitting and learning. Let's give him another red shirt. Another year of sitting and watching for McCarthy may help, especially with some veteran tutelage. Derek Carr to Minnesota could make sense. I could see that. It makes sense for Carr because it's a team with a bunch of weapons. You get to throw to one of the 2 or 3 best receivers in the game. You've got a great head coach, at least as far as quarterbacks go. That would make sense for Derek Carr. And again, it would depend on the Vikings being not all the way out on J.J. McCarthy, but on their way out. That one makes a ton of sense. Indy, maybe. What are they doing with Daniel Jones being hurt? Is Indy really a Super Bowl contender? I don't think so with Derek Carr. But, the other one that a lot of people have brought up, Pittsburgh. Now, that all hinges on what Aaron Rodgers decides to do. Because it's been made very clear by the Pittsburgh Steelers and their new head coach, Mike McCarthy, that they would like Aaron Rodgers back for one final ride. What a terrible buddy cop movie that would be. Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers. No box office there. But McCarthy and Rodgers, one final ride in Pittsburgh, they have no interest in Carr. If Rodgers decides, and look, I've been told by multiple people that the Steelers expect Rodgers to make a decision before free agency this year, that he's not going to string it out into free agency, beyond free agency, and late into the spring. If that actually happens, if Rodgers decides, I'm sorry, Mike, like, I love you, bud, but I'm done. I'm tapped out. I don't think that's going to happen, by the way. I think Rodgers is going to be back. But if Rodgers weren't back, I could see the Steelers being interested in a returning Derek Carr. Kick that quarterback can down the road another year there, boys. Legit, that's the way they think about it. If we can just get to 9 or 10 wins, we got a shot. So you're saying there's a chance. But other than Minnesota and maybe Indy, like Miami, what are you winning in Miami? What? Sorry. Atlanta, like as a replacement for Cousins, maybe the veteran quarterback, but then you're battling with Penix for the job. Only place that makes sense, really, for Derek Carr is Minnesota. If Carr is interested, and if the Vikings say, we can't go into the season with J.J. McCarthy as our presumptive starter. Coming up, I got sucked in by a way off the radar Olympic story last night that I got to share with you. Plus, this Joe Judge thing, I think could actually have real football ramifications. I'll explain and tell you why next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Right now, who would be your last four in if the tournament started tomorrow?
Yeah, last four in order from strongest resume to weakest. Missouri got a massive win last night on the road at Texas A&M. Another quarter one victory, the third of the season, followed by USC. The stars falling right now for the Muss Bus. They're 17-7, same record as Missouri. All records not baked the same. They have one fewer quarter one victory by comparison, though they've got a top 50 overall strength of schedule, but still the Trojans to fight on. They got work to do. Followed by Virginia Tech. The Hokies, they did the hokey pokey and they turned themselves around. That's what it's all about. That's what it was all about last night inside Little John, get a win against Clemson. So that was their third quarter one victory. So a lot of separation, honestly, between Missouri, USC, Virginia Tech compared to the last team I have in right now, and that's San Diego State. The Mountain West has gotten knocked here in recent NCAA tournament fields. They're very fortunate, I think, to sneak in if the tournament started today. Only 1-5 in quarter one games, though they have played at the top 80 overall strength of schedule, 42 in the net. They need to get a couple of more of those quarter one victories to solidify their standing on the at-large ground. So right now, I have San Diego State in, but there is a lot of debate on whether or not that would be true if the committee revealed the field today. I think Vanderbilt, you got to look at first and foremost. A team that is hitting the skids a little bit right now. They have lost now 4 of their last 7 games. They lost Oklahoma. They were getting absolutely killed in that game. They made almost an incredible historic comeback as the Sooners nearly choked it in the final 2 minutes of the game, but Oklahoma still escaped with a 1-point win, 92-91 inside Memorial Coliseum. You know, Vandy was a feel-good kind of surprise story. Mark Bennington's done an excellent job there. But they're right now number 14 net, nothing, to scoff at there. 6-3 in quarter one, 5-2 on the road. But they're only number 33 in Bart's over the last 30 days. They're 183 EFG offense, 213 EFG defense. They're a smaller team. They're struggling through some health issues right now. It's going to be a tough road. They got to go at Auburn coming up tomorrow night. So we'll see what version of the Commodores that we get. And BYU is the other team. They lose to Houston, and they lose convincingly by double figures. Credit to Houston, very tough team to play, but BYU is certainly regressed. They're only number 49 in Toric the last 30 days, and even worse defensively. I remember, talking about the ills of the Carolina Tar Heels. Well, BYU's 317 in the country in effective field goal percentage defense over the last 8 days. As good as DeBonce is, Richie Saunders is, Kibaka's got to step up his game in the interior. They're getting crushed inside. They're not getting out and challenging shots effectively outside. BYU looking like a 6 seed, and that might be generous come Selection Sunday. They're trending very much in the wrong direction.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
You still can't beat the Olympics for one thing in particular. And I'll tell you, I had one of those moments last night when I had it on in the background in the living room. My wife was out. Our son is feeling under the weather, so he's laying on the couch. And daughter's at the gym, whatever it was. I'm just sitting there doing things, reading my phone, and the Olympics are on in the background. And I had one of those moments that really only purely happens when the Olympics are on. Get into it in just a moment with you here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Chris Mack with you in for Nick Costos today here on Westwood One Sports, inside the Westwood One Sports app, and on Sirius XM channel 375. Across North America. Americans, by the way, do not play hockey today. They are off. The Canadians play this afternoon against Switzerland. The Americans back in action tomorrow against Denmark. Ooh. They'll cover the spread, whatever it is. Whatever you're betting on, though, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if the action's on the field, the court, the ice. You want to remember the most exciting moments long after the final whistle. Betting with boosted odds can get you started on that journey inside the BetMGM app. Activate your odds boost token today on any sports bet. You'll receive a bigger payout if you win. Grab your token and elevate your excitement with BetMGM. Make it legendary. Download the BetMGM app today. So the Olympics are on in the background last night. And we'll get into Joe Judge in a second, because I think this nonsensical rambling of his on the witness stand in the Trinidad Chambliss eligibility hearing could actually hurt them on a football level. I'll explain why in a minute. But I had one of those pure Olympic moments last night because skeleton was on. Skeleton is not bobsled. It is not luge. Skeleton is you are on a sled going face first down a sheet of ice at 70 miles an hour. Happened to be the event that was on. And they're rolling through, because it's evening, so everything's taped from earlier in the day. So they roll through it pretty quick. They get to the Americans, and the one guy did really well. And then they get to the other American, and it's this guy, and they pop his name up on the screen. And they pop up everyone's hometown, which is great, because this is the purely Olympic moment that you get. The purely Olympic moment that you get is someone pops up on the screen. They put name and hometown, and you do the Leo DiCaprio, point at the screen and go, I know that place. And wouldn't you know it, Dan Barefoot, who, do you sled skeleton? Do you slide skeleton? Do you ride skeleton? I don't know what it's called, but he's at the Olympics taking part in skeleton for the U.S. Olympic team. Dan Barefoot is from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And for those of you that don't know anything about nor care about western central Pennsylvania geography. Johnstown, PA. It's about an hour and a half east of Pittsburgh in Cambria County. Johnstown is mostly known for two things: the Great Johnstown Flood in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and the movie Slapshot, which is one of the greatest sports movies of all time. They filmed it there. The Charlestown Chiefs were based on the real-life Johnstown Chiefs. The Cambria County War Memorial is a very special place to go watch a hockey game, a minor league hockey game, really bad concerts. I think Insane Clown Posse has played there multiple times. Yep, get the hoses out and watch the Faygo off the seats. It's the Johnstown Cambria War Memorial. It's a great old barn. Anyway, Johnstown is that's what it's known for. But I saw this Dan Barefoot, and I immediately pointed to the screen. I know where Johnstown is. And then went online, and then they were actually talking about him. They called him a landscaper. He's a landscape architect, okay? Give him a little more credit than that. He's not mowing people's yards in the summer and plowing driveways in the winter. Dan Barefoot on the U.S. skeleton team, he's a landscape architect. He's got fancy graph paper probably in his desk drawer. But he's from Johnstown, PA. And they talked about how his dad would build sled runs for him in their backyard as a kid. And before they cut to Dan Barefoot's dad sitting in the stands in, I guess it's Cortina, maybe it's in Milan, probably in Cortina because it's up in the mountains, I think. Before they cut to his dad, I immediately got a vision. Now, again, Johnstown is in Cambria County, about an hour and a half east of Pittsburgh. You get more than a half hour, 45 minutes outside of downtown Pittsburgh. Doing a favor for everyone coming here for the NFL draft in April, by the way. You get more than a half hour, 45 minutes outside of downtown Pittsburgh, it very quickly gets rural, okay? And the Mike McCarthy accent starts to really get accentuated. You get out towards Cambria County, and you got a guy in his backyard building sled runs for his kid. It's highly likely it's a dude in a trucker hat and a flannel shirt standing in his backyard with the hose spraying down a snow-covered hillside with a Marlboro Red hanging from the corner of his lip. Hey, Danny, I got your sled run ready for yins and your buddies. Get out there. You're going to be an Olympian someday, I'm telling you. Turns out he didn't look like that kind of guy at all. They cut to Dan Barefoot's dad, and he looked like a remarkably normal dude. I'd still like to believe he has the Mike McCarthy Yinzer accent, though. But that was my uniquely Olympic moment last night. Just having it on in the background. Skeleton is going on. And up on the screen pops the 18th ranked skeleton, again, rider, slider, I don't know what they call it, guy at the Olympics. And he happens to be from like an hour and a half east of me. And I went, I know where that is. I know Johnstown, PA. I don't know what Joe Judge was thinking yesterday. I don't know if the testimony was actually given yesterday or we just got the video yesterday of his testimony in this Trinidad Chambliss eligibility hearing that took place. But for those of you that missed it, we played it earlier. The rant he goes off on about how players who have partners who give birth during the season need to tell that partner, I'm not going to be available to change diapers in the middle of the night and handle midnight feedings because I've got to sleep because I play football, was wonderfully tone deaf. And I think there might actually be a football component to this. And what I mean is, if you're a recruit or you're in the portal and you're looking at Ole Miss, like Joe Judge doesn't call all the shots there, but he's pretty high up in the structure. You look at that dude and go, yeah, I'm committed to football. I don't need you to tell me how I'm handling things at home. If my girlfriend happens to be pregnant and gives birth, I'm going to be like, it was a weird look for a guy who really hasn't had much success in coaching whatsoever. He was part of that Patriots machine in the Belichick years. Parlayed that into a job with the Giants, which was awful, and is now in college ball, not even as a head coach. And if I'm interested in going to Ole Miss or Ole Miss is interested in me as a football player, I'm avoiding Joe Judge like the plague. I am. Not because I plan on getting my girlfriend pregnant while we're in college and having to get up to change diapers or feed the baby at 1 a.m, but because I don't want my assistant coaches trying to micromanage my personal life. You can tell me I got to go home and get 8.5 hours of sleep, coach. I get it. But I'm a college kid who is committed to playing football, and you may even be paying me handsomely to do so, but I don't need you quite literally coming into our bedroom and telling me how to handle things at home. The weird look for Joe Judge that if I'm an Ole Miss recruit, I'm casting a sideways glance toward this morning. Coming up next, I had some pretty strong opinions on what I think the Raiders should do this offseason. So we're going to ask someone a whole hell of a lot closer to the situation what he thinks about Max Crosby, Fernando Mendoza, Alex Guerrero, wellness coordinator, and everything else silver and black. Hugh Myers joins us next here on You Better You Bet.
He fails to recall that Mark Andrews was wide open, had the football in his hands, and dropped the 2-point conversion that would have won the game for the Baltimore Ravens. They lost 41. No, that would have tied the game, I believe. Yes, it wouldn't have even won the game. It would have tied the game if Mark Andrews caught that 2-point conversion against Buffalo. So it wouldn't have even been a guarantee that they would have won. It would have tied the game. With the play from 4th and 4 that the Rams lost on was a tremendous play by Devin Witherspoon guarding Ferguson, the Rams tight end. He was not wide open. He didn't even get his hands on the ball. He was basically playing defense to make sure that it wasn't intercepted. He basically had no chance to catch that football. It wasn't even close. The Rams lost that game because the Seahawks outplayed them, because the Rams defense couldn't stop them. It didn't come down to just that one play. The Rams had other opportunities. It came down to Xavier Smith dropping a punt that resulted in a Seahawks touchdown a play later. It resulted in the Rams not getting it on the other 4th down that they went for. Nothing with Ferguson dropping that football. And it wasn't even like a bad throw from Stafford. It was a hell of a play. Seattle had it perfectly covered. That's what it came down to. There was limited opportunities. And that's why, if you want to make one argument why the Rams lost the game, and I didn't really blame Sean McVay in the moment, but the Rams lose by 4. They were down 31-20. They score a touchdown. You probably should have went for 2. Because if you get the 2-point conversion, that would have made 31-28, and then they wouldn't have had to go for it on 4th down there with the final 4 minutes. They would have kicked the field goal to tie the game, and then we would have saw what would have happened. But I don't know what Paul's talking about. That 6'6" monster. If he caught the ball, he dropped the ball. It wasn't a drop. It wasn't even close to a drop. It was a hell of a play by Seattle. And I don't know, man. I'm lost. Paul scrambled me up. I don't know what he's talking about. Everybody wanted to see Matthew Stafford win the MVP. I think there was as many people that wanted to see Drake May win the MVP. And Stafford would have been in the Super Bowl if the Rams defense got some stops. They gave up 450 yards of offense and 31 points. Anyway, we'll take a short break. Cram it up your cram hole, LaFleur.
I think Vanderbilt, you got to look at first and foremost. A team that is hitting the skids a little bit right now. They have lost 4 of their last 7 games. They lost Oklahoma. They were getting absolutely killed in that game. They made almost an incredible historic comeback as the Sooners nearly choked it in the final 2 minutes of the game. But Oklahoma still escaped with a 1-point win, 92-91 inside Memorial Coliseum. Vandy was a feel-good kind of surprise story. Mark Bennington's done an excellent job there. But they're right now number 14 net, nothing to scoff at there. 6-3 in quarter 1, 5-2 on the road. But they're only number 33 in Bart's over the last 30 days. They're 183 EFG offense, 213 EFG defense. They're a smaller team. They're struggling through some health issues right now.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
It's Friday. Let's get it. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary on Westwood One Sports, always inside your Westwood One Sports app, and live across North America on Sirius XM Channel 375. I've come up with a way to properly punish the Utah Jazz for this tanking business, but is it realistic? We'll talk to Nick Friedell, NBA insider, in about 20 minutes here on You Better You Bet about that and whether anybody's actually going to pay attention to All-Star Weekend. If the USA versus the World fix is actually that, or just kicking the can down the road on the All-Star game becoming increasingly irrelevant in the NBA. But we've been talking plenty of NFL offseason, the idea of Derek Carr maybe making a comeback. He's floated that out there. Talked to Alex Gold in Kansas City earlier. So let's keep it in the AFC West. I've had some wild thoughts, at least according to some, about what the Raiders should be doing this offseason. Let's talk to somebody who's really legit plugged in on everything silver and black from Raider Nation Radio and the Las Vegas Sports Network. Q Myers joins us here inside the Power Hour on You Better You Bet. Q, how you doing this morning?
Man, fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show. Definitely appreciate you.
No, we appreciate you giving us some time, man. I want to start, obviously, with the elephant in the room, which is the Max Crosby situation. Not happy with the way the end of the season played out. Doesn't sound like he's a fan of Tom Brady's wellness director, Alex Guerrero, coming in and telling him about the way the end of the season would go down. And sounds like he'd like to go somewhere else. In particular, the whispers of New England have been mentioned. So let's start with Crosby. Is there any way to mend this relationship between Max Crosby and the Raiders?
Yeah, I think so. And it's funny because it feels like this is the elephant in the room almost every year, right? Every offseason. And I guess when you're a team that has as many coaching changes and coaching hires and fires as the Raiders do, that situation's going to happen. But yeah, Max was not happy when he got sat down at the end of the year. Alex Guerrero is a guy that comes with Tom Brady, as we all know. But, the thing is, everyone sung his praises during training camp. Everyone said, with the weather and everything, the conditions in Henderson, where it's really hot, the guys that are taking care of their bodies are Alex Guerrero and his team. So a lot of people sang his praises during the training camp and leading into the regular season. And then when Max Crosby gets set down for, whatever reason or the other, obviously the knee situation, the first round pick, the number 1 overall pick, we all know what goes into that situation. He just wasn't happy. So I think that things could be mended. I think there just needs to be a serious conversation, and they have to figure out where the timelines match up, if the timelines match up, right? Max wants to win. He wants to win more than anything else. He wants to win. And the Raiders don't look like they're close to winning. But what does the timeline look like? And if it seems like they're somewhat on the same trajectory and on the same line, I think that Max will be okay. If they're not, I can see the Raiders trading him.
Yeah, I was going to say, Max is still at the peak of his powers. He's 28 going on 29, can still have a massive impact on games and a season as a whole, but with all the overhaul that's needed of this roster, I mean, really, you could go up and down, and there's few names outside of Bowers and Genty that you get excited about. Is there a belief in Max Crosby's camp that they can turn this thing around quickly enough to where he's not going to be in the back third, the back stretch of his career before this team is competitive again?
See, that's the key right there. And that's where I think the conversations with Clint Kubiak, who, Max Crosby was there on Tuesday when he was introduced. He wasn't in the actual press conference, but he was in the building because he's in the building first every single day. Clint Kubiak said that he sat down and had a cup of coffee with him and had a conversation. From everything I understand, that conversation went really good. But I do think that there's more conversations to be had. And again, I think you hit it on the head. Do those timelines match up? Max, like I said, wants to win. He talks about that all the time. He wants to be legendary, right? He's got Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali tattooed on his chest. You know what I mean? Like, he wants to be the ultimate winner. So that's his thing. And, of course, he's beloved by Raider Nation. Him and Mark Davis have a fantastic relationship. I know that he doesn't want to leave Las Vegas, but he might have to leave Las Vegas. And then on top of that, the Raiders might look at it and say, you know what? We're not going to win right now, and the best way to try to turn this roster around is actually to move you to a contender where we can get some more assets. So I think it's a two-sided conversation, and I think both sides need to be realistic with each other, take emotions out of it, and just be realistic and say what is better for you and what is better for us.
Keeping it in reality, what do you think they can get in return for Max Crosby if they end up moving on?
Now, that's a great question. I think that it's like a first-round pick. One first-round pick, maybe a player, maybe a first and a third. That's what Devontae was traded for when the Raiders made that move in 2022. It was a first and a third. I could see that. But, it's funny. I hear people saying the Micah Parsons trades, that was 2 first-round picks and a 3-time Pro Bowler in Kenny Clark. I think that's a little bit rich, but you know how the situation goes. If there's more than one team that wants you and they start getting into a bidding war, maybe. The other situation here is a lot of Raider fans are thinking, yeah, go trade him to the Jets, get a couple first-round picks. Well, why would the Jets trade for him, right? Why would a team in the top 10 that is obviously talent void, just like the Raiders are, why would they trade for him? They need all the picks that they can get. So it's got to be a team like the Bills. It's got to be a team like the Bears, the Lions, the Cowboys, teams that actually have realistic opportunities to go win, and that's at the back end. So it's probably going to be a later first-round pick. So then the Raiders have to decide, is that juice worth the squeeze, right? Is that situation something that's going to make us get excited and fired up about turning this roster over?
Q Myers is out in Vegas for Raider Nation Radio and the Las Vegas Sports Network with us here inside the Power Hour on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos. As far as accumulating draft capital goes, I had an idea yesterday, Q. I don't know if this makes sense to you or not, but I look at the Raiders roster and I see a long-term rebuild taking place. Like I said, outside of Bowers and Genty, there aren't a lot of names to get excited about if Max Crosby moves on his way. So why not listen to offers on the first overall pick? I know Mendoza is the only quarterback that people feel good about in this draft, and they know they need a quarterback. But that philosophy of getting the quarterback first when the rest of the roster hasn't been built out has not worked for a lot of young quarterbacks across the league over the last 5 to 10 years. Is there any thought to, okay, we can move this first overall pick for a hefty amount of capital, and we can use the picks we acquire there, the picks we acquire in a possible Max Crosby deal to build out this roster more quickly and dive back in on quarterback in another year or two?
I think the thought is there for sure. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I mean, look, if a team calls and they give you a king's ransom for the number 1 overall pick, you'd be silly not to listen and at least consider it. I think good business is definitely thinking about it. And that's why the Raiders haven't come out as a team and said, yeah, Fernando Mendoza's our guy. Clint Kubiak was asked about him just the other day, and he said, hey, I got a lot of film to study. We'll see where the number 1 overall pick ends up being. We'll see where Fernando ends up going. So a lot of people thought, oh, man, maybe they're not in on Mendoza. Look, I don't think Clint Kubiak's the head coach of the Raiders if they weren't going to go get their quarterback, right? They've been without a quarterback since Derek Carr got sat down by Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. That was multiple GMs ago and multiple head coaches ago. So they've been having this quarterback carousel for the longest. It would be, in theory, you're not wrong. Grab extra draft capital, build this team out, go back into the draft next time and get a quarterback. But you're not guaranteed you're going to have that opportunity. The Raiders learned this when they were trying to get Jaden Daniels a couple years ago, and they ended up with the number 13 overall pick, which was great. They ended up with Brock Bowers, but they didn't get their quarterback, right? So they're not guaranteed that they're going to have this situation again. And a lot of people say, well, Q, if you go and trade back, get extra capital, you can always trade back up. Well, okay, well, what's the point of that, right? I mean, if I'm gonna trade and collect extra picks, and then I'm just going to give them right back to trade back up, what am I doing? It's like I'm hustling backwards. So I just think that when it's all said and done, the Raiders will end up with Fernando Mendoza, Clint Kubiak, and him will have an opportunity to grow together. And the other thing about this is you don't have to play him right away. Tom Brady has also been on the record of saying he's not a fan of quarterbacks playing immediately. And I know he's the number 1 overall pick, and very rarely do you see the number 1 overall pick not play. But when you understand your situation, you know you're not that one quarterback away from being a playoff team. You can sit them for some handful of games, maybe even a year if you want to sit them and let someone else play, like an Aiden O'Connell or another kind of a bridge quarterback, and then get ready when the situation is better, then let that quarterback go play.
What is the hope, you think, realistically, again, for what Mendoza can be? Because I look at Mendoza and I see a guy who obviously is coming off a great year, but I think in a lot of other drafts, he's not a 1-1. I think his ceiling, if everything goes right for Fernando Mendoza, is maybe top 10 to top 12 quarterback in the league. Do the Raiders look at that and say, hey, we're willing to spend first overall capital on this because, like you said, we've been in the quarterback wilderness for 4 or 5 years now?
I mean, personally, I think he could be better than Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold just won the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? And now I know that he has got a lot of weapons around him, and that defense is incredible. I think he could be at least as good as Sam Darnold, right? And he was the, number 3 overall pick by the Jets? So I think that there's a real scenario where Fernando could be good. If he was drafted in the, 2024 draft with Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May, I think he would have been 4th. I don't think he would have been 1st. I'd be silly to believe that he'd be better than Caleb or Jaden or Drake, but I think he could be right behind Drake and ahead of Michael Penix. And I think that that's fair, right? And so if he could end up being a really good Kirk Cousins, a really good Jared Goff, maybe Matt Ryan-ish. You know what I mean? Like, if he could be anywhere around those guys, that's a win, right? And the Raiders haven't had that kind of quarterback play since 2016 Derek Carr, right before he broke his ankle. So I think that for the Raiders in particular, this would be a home run hire if they could bring him in and have him as the face of the franchise. And, oh, by the way, in Vegas, they don't have a home field advantage right now. Allegiant Stadium has a lot of the opposing fans come in with all their jerseys and their signs and all excited and taking over the stadium. You know how many Mendoza jerseys will be all over Allegiant Stadium? They go and take him number 1 overall. And I know you don't draft a player just for jersey sales, but it's also a part of it. And I do think that all of a sudden he could become the face of the franchise, someone Raider Nation could rally behind.
Yeah, reigniting the fan base has to be an important part of it. You got to consider it, definitely. Q Myers with us from Vegas, talking Raiders. Before I continue down the path of the Raiders specifically, though, we naturally brought up Derek Carr because those talks about him maybe jumping back in have come up in the last day or two. Just your impression of that idea. I mean, the only team I could see even remotely making sense would be if Minnesota decides they want to season J.J. McCarthy for another year and Carr gets to go play with a competitive team and some really good receiving weapons at his disposal, a great quarterback-related head coach in Kevin O'Connell. But even that, I think, is a stretch. You know, Carr didn't look terrible in his time in New Orleans, but he also didn't look very good.
Right. Well, that's the thing about it. And listening to him and his brother talk about him coming out of retirement and playing with a contender, I was thinking, this is a guy that hasn't won a playoff game, and he's only played in one in his career, right? I mean, and in 2016 was the peak Derek Carr. That's when he was playing at his highest, and that's when he broke his ankle on Christmas Eve. So, you know, I think if he wants to come back, great. He's a good dude. I think he could be a good quarterback for any team. But it was just funny to hear him say that, well, he has to play for a contender. Well, I mean, what have you done in your career to make that kind of statement? I got to play for a contender. Well, you've never been on a contender. What are we talking about? You know, so and never proven to be the guy that puts that team over the top either. So, I mean, if he wants to go back and play and try to solidify a position for somebody like Minnesota, like the Jets. Look, the thing is, there's not a lot of quarterbacks in this draft, as you know. So, you know, there could be a scenario where a team reaches out. The thing is, they'd have to trade for him. He's under contract with New Orleans, and you know he says he's healthy, so maybe he'd give it a go. But I just thought it was kind of funny that the demands were, well, I got to be able to play for a Super Bowl. Okay, well, you never had an opportunity to play for a Super Bowl, so maybe that's the only reason to lure him out. I don't know, but a lot of Raider fans are talking about bringing him back as a bridge, and I'm like, man, look for your next, not your ex. It's just that simple.
Yeah. Don't settle.
Yes.
Don't fall back into the same bad habits. I got you. What is the expectation for Clint Kubiak? Is there, I mean, obviously, walking into the roster constructed as it is, we all know it's going to take some time to build it out. But what is the immediate expectation? And then what is the long-term hope maybe for Raider fans?
Well, I mean, the long-term hope is that he's going to be the head coach for a long time. He's going to get multiple contracts, right? Because that hasn't happened at all. I mean, I've been here in Las Vegas since 2021. This is the 5th full-time head coach since then, right? And so that lets you know the math doesn't math right there. So that's already a bad situation. So, seeing what he was able to do in Seattle as an offensive play caller, you're hoping that he's able to turn this thing around, grow with the quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, grow with the offense, make it a legit offense, something that they haven't had for a very long time, be able to be the CEO and build this thing up the right way, where you have a lot of young talent, John Spytek and Tom Brady leading the charge when it comes to the roster construction, be able to get this young talent that you're assuming that they're going to bring in and get them all on the same page. So they're a competitive team. They're a team that could be a playoff team year in and year out, right? Not one of those that you look at them on the schedule and say, oh, that's a win, right? I mean, they've got to be much better. Got to bring that commitment to excellence and that just win baby mentality back to the Raiders. And, with his family ties with Gary Kubiak being a 4-time Super Bowl champion, his dad, obviously he's got the football acumen. I mean, he's that guy. So they're just hoping that he could be there for a long time. Basically like John Gruden was the first time when he got hired, when he was a young, up-and-coming guy. They're hoping that Clint Kubiak could be that same guy and take him to the promised land.
What has the Brady effect really been real? Has it been felt around the organization to this point?
Everyone says it has, right? I haven't seen it particularly for myself. I know John Spytek said he's not able to be in the building all the time. Obviously, that had a lot to do with him being on the broadcast for Fox. But with that being said, there's people in the building that say, hey, he's much more heavily involved. He didn't really do a whole lot, in my opinion, last year. But, the one thing we all know about Brady is if he doesn't do something very well, he will work his tail off to get better, just like the broadcast. I don't think his first year broadcasting was very good. Last year was a lot better. So I think that he's going to take this roster, building a job that he has as a minority owner, but the expectations he has, I think he's going to take it a lot more serious and really put his, put everything he can into it to try to get it right and make sure that, his name is not not smeared as like, oh, well, there's something there. There's an area that Tom Brady failed at. He doesn't want to do that.
Hugh Myers of Raider Nation Radio and the Las Vegas Sports Network with us here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today. One last thing I wanted to ask you about, because I think it's the under the radar sort of linchpin to this whole thing working over the next few years is the offensive line. How quickly can they remake that offensive line so that when Fernando Mendoza does get in there and does get snaps, he's not running for his life?
Yeah, they have to do that immediately, right? I mean, that's something that they should do before he ever gets drafted, because that offensive line was a train wreck last year. I mean, let's just keep it real. Geno Smith got sacked, 55 times? Like, that just can't happen. So, yeah, I'm looking at that offensive line. I'm looking at the $100 million that the Raiders have in salary cap space and thinking that they have to attack that. The other situation is Clint Kubiak comes in, and you know what kind of blocking scheme the Kubiaks, the Shanahans always run, that zone blocking scheme. It's never really worked for the Raiders whenever they've attempted to do that. So I asked Coach about that the other day. What do you need? Well, we need athletic offensive linemen. We need a smart center. We need this, that, and the third. So they've got to not only go out there and reconstruct the offensive line, they've got to reconstruct it to guys that could fit that scheme. So that means that the offensive line coach hire is going to be important as well. So they've got to get that done first and foremost. I would never put Fernando Mendoza back behind that offensive line until I knew that it was solid.
Actually, one more thing before I let you run, Q. For those watching on the YouTube stream, they can see the Tupac plaque behind you. So
right.
My wife and I have, since we first met, since like our very first date, have a long-running argument. I am East Coast Biggie. She is West Coast Tupac. I imagine being in Vegas, you fall down on the West Coast Tupac side, correct? And how much did the Diddy documentary completely blow up all the I can't listen to Diddy songs anymore.
It really did, man. It's really bad. And look, I'm a West Coast hip hop guy, but I love the East Coast hip hop. I'm a big Diddy, fan and the music that he put out. Biggie, obviously, I got a picture of me and Diddy over here in the house as well. And yeah, that documentary and everything that went down really kind of puts a dark cloud over everything that we knew growing up. And all the different lyrics you go back and hear. take that. And you're like, oh, maybe not. So yeah, it's not too good. Not too good, my man.
Q, I appreciate your time this morning, man. Appreciate you getting up early out west. Going to be an interesting offseason in Raider Nation. We appreciate you taking the time.
No doubt. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Q Myers of Raider Nation Radio and the Las Vegas Sports Network. I mean, obviously a Tupac fan. He's got the plaque on the wall behind him. So it's in our family, at least, it is a long running back and forth between my wife and I. And I have always solidly been on the Big E East Coast side, and she's been on the Tupac West Coast side. And it's very hard to back the East Coast side of things after you see the Diddy documentary, because he was involved in all of it. And I can't even listen to Diddy songs anymore. I can't. The entire Bad Boy catalog has been ruined for me by the Diddy documentary and everything. And so I've had to basically, yet again, for like the 6 millionth time in nearly 20 years of marriage, turn to my wife and say, yeah, West Coast over East Coast. And I shrug my shoulders and walk away from it, feeling like I lost another one, my better half. It's the way it goes. Speaking of the NBA, though, because we were talking about the Utah Jazz earlier, I think there is a legitimate way to actually punish the Utah Jazz for this tanking thing. They got a $500,000 fine, it was announced yesterday, for holding out Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lauri Markkanen from the fourth quarter of a couple games last week. That's not going to do anything to deter the Jazz or any other team from tanking. $500,000 fine when you're making $300, $400 million in revenue in a given season. I have an idea for how you can actually deter NBA teams from actively tanking. We'll get into that with veteran NBA insider Nick Friedell next here on You Better You Bet, right here on Westwood One Sports.
You know what? The NBA All-Star Game has a chance to save itself this weekend, but as always, it's up to the players. That's who it's up to. It's not up to whatever format or whatever kind of rules we want to have or whatever the state of the league is around the game. It's up to the players, man. It's how much effort are they going to put in, right? if you get a Kobe Bryant type effort, if you get a Magic Johnson type effort, you get a Michael Jordan type effort from these players, then you're going to have a great game. And you're going to have a great product. You're going to have a fun, interesting game that's compelling, that's exciting, that's competitive, and that's entertaining. And that's all we want to see. All we want to see is some effort. There's no magic formula. There's no recreating the wheel. It's just about playing with effort, treating the game like it matters, treating like you have millions of people watching.
I think Vanderbilt, you got to look at first and foremost. A team that is hitting the skids a little bit right now. They have lost 4 of their last 7 games. They lost Oklahoma. They were getting absolutely killed in that game. They made almost an incredible historic comeback as the Sooners nearly choked it in the final 2 minutes of the game. But Oklahoma still escaped with a 1-point win, 92-91 inside Memorial Coliseum. You know, Vandy was a feel-good kind of surprise story. Mark Bennington's done an excellent job there. But they're right now number 14 net, nothing, to scoff at there. 6-3 in quarter 1, 5-2 on the road. But they're only number 33 in Barts over the last 30 days. They're 183 EFG offense, 213 EFG defense. They're a smaller team. They're struggling through some health issues right now. It's going to be a tough road. They got to go at Auburn coming up tomorrow night. So we'll see what version of the Commodores that we get. And BYU is the other team. They lose to Houston, and they lose convincingly by double figures. Credit to Houston, very tough team to play, but BYU is certainly regressed. They're only number 49 in Torrey the last 30 days, and even worse defensively. I remember, talking about the ills of the Carolina Tar Heels. Well, BYU's 317 in the country in effective field goal percentage defense over the last 8 days. As good as DeBonce is, Richie Saunders is, Kibaka's got to step up his game in the interior. They're getting crushed inside. They're not getting out and challenging shots effectively outside. BYU looking like a 6 seed, and that might be generous come Selection Sunday. They're trending very much in the wrong direction.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Inside the Power Hour, the final hour here on You Better You Bet for a Friday. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today on Westwood One Sports. You can always join the conversation at 310-840-4910. Thanks to Q Myers for joining us from Vegas, giving us some insight on the silver and black. Alex Gold earlier, an AFC West kind of day as we talked what could be one of the most unique off seasons in the last decade or so for the Kansas City Chiefs. Before we wrap up, we'll get you our 3 stars of the day, which will likely include some thoughts from each of those two gentlemen. We'll talk NBA with Nick Friedell in just a couple of moments here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. I have a thought on how you can actually punish teams for tanking. Not just a fine that really doesn't mean much to them at all, but actual impact that would really deter teams from any kind of tanking strategy that the league could be able to prove. I'll ask Nick about that when we get him on in just a few moments. We haven't even talked yet about the fact that in the Lakers win last night over the Mavs, 124-104 in LA, LeBron James had, do we call it the oldest triple-double in NBA history? He was the oldest player in NBA history to have a triple-double. 28 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds. So at the age of 41 years, 44 days, he passed Karl Malone for the record of the oldest player in NBA history to record a triple-double. Still a little something left in there, maybe just a little gas left in the tank for LeBron. and the Lakers as we approach the All-Star break. That's another thing I can't wait to ask Nick about. Is there any fix for All-Star weekend? I don't know. I don't know if there is. We heard Nick Wright's wild idea yesterday. I don't know if, well, first of all, that's never going to happen. Would be wild if it did, but I don't know if there's a legitimate, realistic fix for the NBA All-Star weekend as it takes place this weekend, and it's USA versus World. But there's 2 U.S. teams, and there's 1 World team, and we're going to play mini games, and how legit. Anyway, we'll get into all of that, the All-Star weekend, and maybe a little LeBron discussion as well. Nick Friedell, Audacy, NBA Insider, joins us. Check out all of Audacy's newest sports podcasts on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Morning, Nick. How are you, my friend?
It's great to be with you, buddy. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. I want to start with this because the news came down yesterday afternoon about the Jazz actually being punished, as I make air quotes with my fingers, for sitting Jaren Jackson and Lauri Markkanen in the fourth quarter of those games last week. A $500,000 fine. I like to do this to put it in like everyday legitimate perspective for average people like you and I and the listeners. Like a $500,000 fine for a team that has $320 million in revenue in a given year is like you or me getting a speeding ticket. Like we're going to slow down for a week or two, especially driving through that speed trap. But it doesn't mean we're never going to speed again. Teams are still going to try to tank. So my fix, you tell me if this is anywhere approaching a realistic solution, is dock them probability and percentage points in the lottery. Oh, you finished as one of the top 3 and you're going to have a 14% chance at the top overall pick in the draft lottery? Nope, not anymore. We found you guilty of tanking. Your probability gets cut in half. You're down to 7% now. We'll disperse the other 7% amongst the ping pong balls to all the other teams in the lottery to make it even, but your odds get cut in half. Would that possibly deter teams finally from tanking the way some of these teams like the Jazz are trying so hard to tank?
I like where your head's at, and I think there's a chance, but tanking is so prevalent, and it's certainly worse than we can remember in a long time, but it's been part of the game for years and years and years that I'm sure we're just waiting for the next team to find some loophole and be like, all right, well, we'll take tonight and we won't take on Thursday, but we'll figure out some other way around it. The league has a massive, massive problem with all this. They know it, which is why they're coming down as hard as they can to the point about the speeding ticket. But the reality is, if you get caught this publicly, what they're hoping is that a team, let's take the Jazz in this case, says, oh, God, all right, let's kind of rethink how we're doing the substitutions late, and let's put our best players in to see what happens later in these games. All we can know is how this unfolds going into March and April, but it's not going away. And what I know the league is hoping is, okay, well, we find the Jazz $500,000, so all these other teams are going to sit there and go, oh, God, we don't want to deal with this either. Let's see how this plays out over the next couple of weeks. But the incentive to tank remains so gigantic that it's not going to change anything right away, and that's the whole problem.
Yeah, you're right. It's so prevalent, and it's so hard to dissuade, let alone prove. Like, at this point, okay, maybe the Jazz sit Jackson and Markkanen for the third quarter instead of the fourth, right? Like, to your point, teams will find loopholes and ways around and plausible deniability towards, well, you weren't tanking. Our guy needed rest. So I don't know. I don't know if there is an easy fix, but just I thought a little more punitive punishment may help. I don't know if that's realistic or not. I mentioned the LeBron James double or triple double last night as we were coming back from break. You still see it in glimpses, right? Like, LeBron's still in there. He may be a shadow of LeBron at the peak of his powers, but it's still in there. I guess my question about LeBron is, can it be in there often enough in the playoffs that the Lakers can actually put together a run?
No, and that's the biggest problem. And to any LeBron point, LeBron's incredible. For me, he's the second best player behind MJ. What he's done over the last 2 decades is unbelievably awesome. But when you watch him now, you have the moments like we saw last night where you go, oh, yeah, I've seen this. I know what this is. Do exactly what you're saying, though. There's just no way. And there's no way, even as great as LeBron is, can anybody expect someone to play at the level he played at for so long this late in his career. It's just not going to happen. It shouldn't make you go back in time and go, oh, man, I remember. I mean, all those playoff runs, especially with Cleveland and the talent that wasn't around him, you go, oh, well, he can do it. This LeBron is just not close to that LeBron. It shows how high the standard was for so long. But anybody who's banking on the Lakers being able to do anything this year right now, he can still have his moments. He just can't put it together night to night the way we're used to seeing.
Where do you think he is next year?
If we were betting on it, I would say probably Cleveland. It feels like LeBron loves a good story. There's no way. I mean, I thought at the beginning of this year, this was it. There's just no way in my mind, having watched LeBron all these years with the ego that he has, that he's not getting a farewell tour. There's no way that LeBron isn't going to all these arenas and getting the rocking chair. Oh, thank you, everybody, for coming out. It's been so wonderful. That would shock me if that happens. And, you know, who knows over the course of the next couple months. But Cleveland makes a hell of a lot of sense. You can have Bronny in Cleveland for that run one more time. You have a younger team that can't really seem to get over the hump. It makes a lot of sense from a storybook standpoint. And if we know anything about LeBron, we know that he's aware enough and perceptive enough to want that ride off into the sunset.
Let's keep it in Cleveland for just a minute. Were you shocked or surprised at all by the Harden deal?
Any team that is banking on James Harden to lead them in the postseason, good luck to them.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it ties into the LeBron question, because do you believe that Harden can still do it? Absolutely. I mean, there are nights when James Harden is going to have 35 or 40. You're like, oh, yeah, he's rolling. We've seen this. There are far too many other nights in Harden's career, especially in the games that matter the most. You're like, where the hell is Harden? What's going on? So I was surprised that a team like Cleveland, who knows they need that extra piece, was banking on, oh, you know who's going to save us? James Harden. That is just not a recipe for success. I mean, you can try any which way you want. When you've seen it this many years in a row, it's tough to see something that hasn't ever been there.
Nick Friedell is with us, Audacy Sports NBA Insider. Check out all of Audacy's newest sports podcasts on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Kendrick Perkins had a great line yesterday on Get Up on ESPN, Nick. There's only three things I fear: healthy food, reality TV, and the Detroit Pistons. And the Pistons have opened up, above and beyond that being a great line, the Pistons have opened up a 5.5 game lead in the East now. You go to bet it if you want to bet Pistons to win the East, and they're right there on the board, right next to the Cavs and the Knicks, and not far ahead of the Celtics. And I get it. The Knicks and the Celtics are going to be there. But I look at those two teams as always being one key injury away from the house of cards tumbling. It's not a knock on the depth of their rosters. It's just that one key injury brings it all down. We just mentioned Harden and the Cavs. I'm right there with you in lockstep. I'm sorry. They're not going anywhere with James Harden on the roster. I don't want to say it makes it the Pistons by default, because I think a lot of us have been really impressed by what the Pistons have done this year. I love Cade Cunningham, but does it make sense to you when Perk says, fear the Pistons, that they realistically are the team to beat in the East?
It still worries me a little bit because we haven't seen it happen. With the Pistons, what you're banking on is, can the team that has been dominant at times in December and January really keep things rolling when the stakes are going to be the highest? I'm a big believer in Cade Cunningham. I think he's coming into his own. It's only a matter of time before he goes and wins an MVP. I think we're a year or two away from that right there. The problem with Detroit is when you have a team that has not had enough experience, it's rare when they go from not having a lot of experience or get knocked out in the first round last year to, boom, the finals. The issue there, and the reason I actually am starting to believe that it could happen, is I've not sold on the Cavs at all. We outlined it. The Knicks, I mean, this was supposed to be the Knicks walking away with the East, and they had all these pieces, and they make the Tibbs to Mike Brown switch, and you go, oh, okay. The Knicks don't look like a team that is running real well. And they have Jalen Brunson, and he's awesome, especially in the clutch, but I'm never, ever believing that Karl Anthony Towns is the guy that you are winning with in the biggest of games. So we go back to Detroit. I mean, Boston with Tatum, maybe, but that is a stretch to think that he's going to come back, play it the same way he's played for so long. I actually wouldn't mind throwing a couple bucks on the Pistons because I think your odds are still pretty good, and there's still enough doubt at this point in the season where you go, it's worth it for me to take the risk. And tying it all back around, when you play Detroit, you know you're going to be in for one of the toughest games of your season. They hit you hard. They have no fear, and they have a ton of depth and talented players. And when you have that type of recipe in the playoffs, you are going to give yourself a chance. The question is, how are they going to rise when they need to in those games that have the biggest importance that they've ever been in? And only time will tell. But given those options, that's where I'd put my money.
Audacy NBA insider Nick Friedell with us here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos. Before I let you run, All-Star game, All-Star weekend, Nick. Is there a fix for this? I don't think there is.
Chris, I grew up watching the All-Star game and being so excited to turn on the TV and see the best of the best and see them playing at a pretty high level. I'd say back to 2012 when I started covering the league and being around, there was a game in Orlando where Dwayne Wade broke Kobe's nose. And you went, whoa, these guys are still into it. I mean, it was also the game where people might remember the East starters are dancing, and Derrick Rose is sitting on the platform like, I'm good. There were a lot of different layers there, but when you watch that game, you went, this still matters to these guys. That was 14 years ago. I've been lucky enough to cover a lot of different all-star games. I've been lucky enough to watch the league kind of grow and all the money that's poured in. All of that is to say, I don't believe that there is a fix. I think the game has lost its way completely because it doesn't need all these quirky USA versus the world, KD versus LeBron. Oh, Steph's going to pick it. That thing last year watching Steph Curry play Ryan Dunn, I was like, what the hell is going on? So I don't buy that anything's going to change because it's all on the players wanting to be out there and perform. If you can't get East versus West and guys trying hard, you have a very big problem. And we could talk about this all day. All I would say is when you watch the All-Star game, what is it starting to remind you more and more of? The regular season. And when that trust starts to erode for a fan base that is expecting a certain level, it only goes down from there. So I am very concerned as somebody who makes their living around the league that it's way bigger than the All-Star game now. It's these guys night to night. You're not sure who's going to be out there, and whoever's out there, you're not sure how hard they're playing before the playoffs. And I think it is a major, major problem for the NBA.
Nick, appreciate the time, man. It was great catching up with you.
Great to be with you, buddy. Have a good one.
You too. Audacy NBA insider Nick Friedell with us here on You Better You Bet. Check out all of Audacy's newest sports podcasts on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Great insight from a veteran NBA insider there. I'm glad. Look, I didn't think I was alone in the thoughts about the Cavs adding James Harden. But that was my biggest takeaway from Nick there, is that this is a thought and a belief around the league amongst people who are around the game every day. Did Cleveland need to do that? I don't think they did. I understand the point about trying to get over the hump, but I don't think that was the move. And I think it's going to end up hurting Cleveland, forgetting the long term. In the short term, 2.5 months from now, when we're in the first, maybe second round of the playoffs, and Harden goes cold for a couple of nights, and the Cavs dip out early yet again. Coming up, we have laughed, we've cried, we've learned a lot. The 3 stars of the day next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Right now, who would be your last 4 in if the tournament started tomorrow?
Yeah, last 4 in order from strongest resume to weakest. Missouri got a massive win last night on the road at Texas A&M. Another Q1 victory, the 3rd of the season, followed by USC. The stars falling right now for the Muss Bus. They're 17-7, same record as Missouri. All records not baked the same. They have 1 fewer Q1 victory by comparison, though they've got a top 50 overall strength of schedule, but still the Trojans to fight on. They got work to do. Followed by Virginia Tech. The Hokies, they did the hokey pokey and they turned themselves around. That's what it's all about. That's what it was all about last night inside Little John, getting a win against Clemson. So that was their 3rd Q1 victory. So a lot of separation, honestly, between Missouri, USC, Virginia Tech compared to the last team I have in right now, and that's San Diego State. The Mountain West has gotten knocked here in recent NCAA tournament fields. They're very fortunate, I think, to sneak in if the tournament started today. Only 1-5 in Q1 games, though they have played at the top 80 overall strength of schedule, 42 in the net. They need to get a couple of more of those Q1 victories to solidify their standing on the at-large ground. So right now, I have San Diego State in, but there is a lot of debate on whether or not that would be true if the committee revealed the field today. I think Vanderbilt, you got to look at first and foremost. A team that is hitting the skids a little bit right now. They have lost now 4 of their last 7 games. They lost Oklahoma. They were getting absolutely killed in that game. They made almost an incredible historic comeback as the Sooners nearly choked it in the final 2 minutes of the game, but Oklahoma still escaped with a 1-point win, 92-91 inside Memorial Coliseum. You know, Vandy was the feel-good kind of surprise story. Mark Bennington's done an excellent job there. But they're right now number 14 net, nothing, to scoff at there. 6-3 in quarter one, 5-2 on the road. But they're only number 33 in Barts over the last 30 days. They're 183 EFG offense, 213 EFG defense. They're a smaller team. They're struggling through some health issues right now. It's going to be a tough road. They got to go at Auburn coming up tomorrow night. So we'll see what version of the Commodores that we get. And BYU is the other team. They lose to Houston, and they lose convincingly by double figures. Credit to Houston, very tough team to play, but BYU is certainly regressed. They're only number 49 in Toric the last 30 days, and even worse defensively. I remember, talking about the ills of the Carolina Tar Heels. Well, BYU's 317 in the country in effective field goal percentage defense over the last 8 days. As good as DeBonce is, Richie Saunders is, Keba Keita's got to step up his game in the interior. They're getting crushed inside. They're not getting out and challenging shots effectively outside. BYU looking like a 6 seed, and that might be generous come Selection Sunday. They're trending very much in the wrong direction.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
It's Friday. The weekend is here. We're feeling good on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on Westwood One Sports, always inside the Westwood One Sports app as well, and live across North America on Sirius XM Channel 375. Appreciate each and every single one of you for joining the show today. Black and Abdallah are up in just a couple of minutes. We'll get you our 3 stars of the day in a moment, because some interesting things were said by our friends on the show today, regardless of whether it's on the field, on the court, on the ice, whatever action you're into. You want to remember the most exciting moments long after the final whistle. Betting with boosted odds can get you started on that journey. Activate your odds boost token on any sports bet, and you'll receive a bigger payout if you win. Grab your token, elevate your excitement with BetMGM. Make it legendary. Download the BetMGM app today. I mentioned it earlier. We played the Kendrick Perkins clip talking about the Pistons. We talked to Nick Friedell about the Eastern Conference, the top of the Eastern Conference as well. I love the Pistons at plus 340 to win the East. I mean, what is their path going to look like in the Eastern Conference playoffs? I mean, maybe they open up with like a Charlotte and they get a Cleveland in the second round. Is it going to be a tough road to the Eastern Conference Finals? Kenny mentioned that in our chat earlier here while we had Nick on. At the very least, Detroit gets to the Eastern Conference Finals. At the very least. And then we'll see who they face. It's going to be a much more experienced, I presume, Celtics or Knicks team, but 2 teams that can't really afford to get dinged up in those first 2 rounds. They can't. They got to be fully healthy going into the Eastern Conference Finals. Otherwise, I think the Pistons take care of them, despite the experience disadvantage. And Cade Cunningham looks like a dude who's ready to take off in the postseason and become a household name for even non-NBA fans. I love the Pistons at plus 340 to win the East. They're going to be in the conference finals and then win 4 out of 7. Bang. Returning almost 3.5 times your money. I love it. Let's get to our 3 stars of the day.
3. The other part is if you draft Jeremiah Love at 9 overall, guys, he has to me immediately be a top 5 running back in football. Immediately. There's no, no, right away. He's got to eventually be a Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got to eventually be a Bijan Robinson. And maybe he is. He has to be that kind of back, in my opinion, if you're going to go at number 9 overall.
Alex Gold earlier today from Kansas City talking about the prevalent thought that the Chiefs are going to go running back at the top of the first round with Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. I would love that pick if I were a Chiefs fan. But he brings up plenty of questions about the impact of taking a top 10 running back and whether you can immediately get that return on investment with some high-end draft capital. interesting thing to keep an eye on as part of what could be the most interesting offseason the Chiefs have had in at least a decade. Number 2.
2.
The league has a massive, massive problem with all this. They know it, which is why they're coming down as hard as they can. The reality is the incentive to tank remains so gigantic that it's not going to change anything right away, and that's the whole problem.
Nick Friedell, Audacy NBA insider, just a few moments ago talking about the tanking issue in the NBA. I told you, you want to punish a team like the Jazz for actively tanking? Don't fine them. Money doesn't mean anything when you're pulling in $340 million a year in revenue. $500,000 fine? No way. Take away lottery chances. Then you might have something. Finally, number 1.
1.
I mean, personally, I think he could be better than Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold just won the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? And now I know that he has got a lot of weapons around him, and that defense is incredible. I think he could be at least as good as Sam Darnold, right? And he was the, number 3 overall pick by the Jets? So I think that there's a real scenario where Fernando could be good.
Hugh Myers of Raider Nation Radio on the expectations for Fernando Mendoza when and if he becomes that first overall pick. I'm telling you, trade the pick, start the rebuild, get your quarterback later. We'll see. Like I said, Bleck and Abdallah up next here on Westwood One Sports. Thanks to Bill Zimmerman, Tyler Morales, Kenny Henderson, Mike Brown, and Dan Turner. And thanks to each and every one of you for joining. Keep it right here on Westwood One Sports. Have a great weekend.
Right now, who would be your last 4 in if the tournament started tomorrow?
Yeah, last 4 in order from strongest resume to weakest. Missouri got a massive win last night on the road at Texas A&M. Another Q1 victory, the 3rd of the season, followed by USC. The star is falling right now for the Must Bus. They're 17-7, same record as Missouri. All records not baked the same. They have 1 fewer Q1 victory by comparison, though they've got a top 50 overall strength of the schedule, but still the Trojans to fight on. They got work to do. Followed by Virginia Tech. The Hokies, they did the hokey pokey and they turned themselves around. That's what it's all about. That's what it was all about last night. Inside Little John get a win against Clemson. So that was their 3rd Q1 victory. So a lot of separation, honestly, between Missouri, USC, Virginia Tech compared to the last team I have in right now, and that's San Diego State. The Mountain West has gotten knocked here in recent NCAA tournament fields. They're very fortunate, I think, to sneak in if the tournament started today. Only 1-5 in quadrant one games, though they have played at the top 80 overall strength of schedule, 42 in the net. They need to get a couple of more of those quadrant one victories to solidify their standing on the at-large ground. So right now, I have San Diego State in, but there is a lot of debate on whether or not that would be true if the committee revealed the field today.
He fails to recall that Mark Andrews was wide open, had the football in his hands, and dropped the 2-point conversion that would have won the game for the Baltimore Ravens. They lost 41. No, that would have tied the game, I believe. Yes, it wouldn't have even won the game. It would have tied the game if Mark Andrews caught that 2-point conversion against Buffalo. So it wouldn't have even been a guarantee that they would have won. It would have tied the game. With the play from 4th and 4 that the Rams lost on was a tremendous play by Devin Witherspoon guarding Ferguson, the Rams tight end. He was not wide open. He didn't even get his hands on the ball. He was basically playing defense to make sure that it wasn't intercepted. He basically had no chance to catch that football. It wasn't even close. The Rams lost that game because the Seahawks outplayed them, because the Rams defense couldn't stop them. It didn't come down to just that one play. The Rams had other opportunities. It came down to Xavier Smith dropping a punt that resulted in a Seahawks touchdown a play later. It resulted in the Rams not getting it on the other 4th down that they went for. Nothing with Ferguson dropping that football. And it wasn't even like a bad throw from Stafford. It was a hell of a play. Seattle had it perfectly covered. That's what it came down to. There was limited opportunities. And that's why, if you want to make one argument why the Rams lost the game, and I didn't really blame Sean McVay in the moment, but the Rams lose by 4. They were down 31-20. They score a touchdown. You probably should have went for 2. Because if you get the